Source. My name is Aja Graydon Dantzler, and for this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, I will be filling in for Andrea Lawful Saunders, who is out for the month of August. But I'll be here with you guys this week, so today and Thursday. Again, I'm Aja Graydon Dantzler. I am, my day job is being a singer and a performer. I'm one half of the group Kindred the Family Soul, so I hope since we talking to Philly that y'all know all about that Kindred the Family Soul. And if you don't, I encourage you to look us up and check us out. As far as what we're going to be doing today on The Source, and I'm really excited about this subject matter, is today we're going to be talking about educating Black children. And for those of you who know my personal history, I have 6 children of my own. So I have many, many Black children running throughout my home, darling. And I'm very excited to talk about this because this has been at the forefront of concern in my household for quite some time. So let me just bring you guys up to speed. Currently, I have an 11-year-old, so that's 6th grade. I have twin 13-year-olds. Shout out to them. It's National Twins Day. I have 2 13-year-olds. I have a 16, almost 17-year-old who is a rising senior. I also have a 19-year-old who has taken off some time and is out into the world. I have a 22-year-old who is currently in his senior year at a HBCU. And so as you can see, this is something that I have to deal with on a consistent basis, understanding what are the right schools for my children to attend. What kind of education do I seek for them? How do I advocate for them? This has been ongoing. And one of the things that I've experienced over this time, which has been in many ways equal parts amazing and transformative, but also stressful, full of anxiety, changes, and mistakes. So I want to be clear with you guys today. I come to you as a parent truly vulnerable in this moment, that the way that I've experienced education and how I educate my children, I've been through lots of ups and downs. I've experienced private school. I've experienced public school. I've experienced charter school. I've experienced the HBCU system, as well in my own experience. Like I said, I've done, and with my children, religious school. So there's a religious-based schooling. So there's a lot, and there's a wealth of different things that we can talk about as it pertains to educating Black children. And so I just wanted to let you guys know that I would love to hear from you today. You can call in at 215-634-8065. We have some really great guests in line today, and I'm super excited about them. One of them is Dr. Kamika Royal, and she is an associate professor at Loyola and urban education, and she focuses on the intersections of race, politics, history, and urban school reform. So I'm really excited to talk to her because I know that throughout this pandemic, many parents have a new perspective on what it is schooling looks like for their children. This pandemic has brought up all of the different ways that Black children are affected, whether it be through access to food, whether it be mental health, all of these issues, and physical health, of course, because obviously we're dealing with the realities of COVID. And now on the current horizon, we have here in Philadelphia or in the state of Pennsylvania, children will be returning to school August 31st. Some of them are too young to receive the vaccine. Some of them are, their parents do not and want to opt out of the vaccine. So this becomes a very sensitive subject. Also, too, Dr. Haidt announced that he is considering making it a mandate for teachers to be vaccinated. So this idea of what happens in our schools for all the children is a hot topic, but specifically how this affects Black children turns into such a very important subject matter for us because, of course, we are the elders, we are the parents, we are out there trying to make the best decisions that we possibly can. And we know that we have a ton of obstacles in front of us. Also, too, today we're going to be talking to a student advocate, parent, educator, Tamara Anderson, who has a background in organizing quite a bit as it pertains to Black students here in the city of Philadelphia. And we're going to be talking to her about how to advocate for your child, how to advocate for students at, the policy level. So we're really excited to talk to her as well. She's done a wealth of work at every level, being a parent and an advocate and an educator. And so we're excited to get an opportunity to talk with her. We have to figure out how we're going to stand up for our children in this moment. We have national conversation around critical race theory, which, to be 100% honest, I'm still not sure if many of us really understand what that is and how that affects us. For me, I've had children in the public school system now for quite some time, and I've actually never heard this brought up until now. Obviously, you have Black History Month. You have high school students here in Philadelphia, and not in very many public school systems where African American studies is a required course for graduation. So there's a lot to talk about with Ms. Anderson. So we look forward to talking to her as well. Also in the 3 o'clock hour, we're going to be talking with Yolanda Jones, who, if you get an opportunity to look her up on Instagram, or any of these women on Instagram or social media, there's quite a bit of information about them. But Yolanda Jones is also a person who I have come in contact with through social media, met some amazing women, some amazing Black women in the social media space. She is really an amazing homeschooler. I came to know her because, honestly, I discovered a photo of her with her twins. And as I said earlier, peace to her twins as well, as National Twins Day. A photo of her and her twins, which was so amazing. Actually, it was her partner and her twins. And I got to know her through social media. She is homeschooling her students. And I love her approach. I think she has some really amazing information at her fingertips to help us to understand how we restructure how we look at schooling for our families, for those of you who are considering homeschool, and for those of you who would like to, continue your children to be in the building or be in traditional, quote unquote, public schooling or private schooling. So I'm looking forward to talking to her, because the way that she structures her home life and how she values peace of mind and how she values these things have brought me, into a different perspective in my own home life. Yesterday, we had the opportunity, and we were talking about the Olympics yesterday, and specifically talking about Black women and girls. But yesterday, we had an opportunity to speak with Dr. Janice Johnson Dias, and she is the author of Parent Like It Matters. And one of the main things that she brought up was listening to children, listening uninterrupted. And so I'm looking forward to making that tie with Yolanda Jones today and talking to her about communication with her young students and how she's able to keep the environment nurturing, but also full of rigor. And let's talk about rigor. I want y'all to think about these things, and please make sure that you write down your questions and you tune in. All three of these guests are phenomenal women who are learned and understand exactly what they're doing. And I'm so ready. My heart and my chest is open to receive what they have to say today. So again, if you want to call in, the number is 215-634-8065. Please make sure that that you know exactly what you want to talk about, because so that we can cover, all of these different things. I want to go back and talk a little bit about my children. Just recently, my son returned to school after what I call a forced gap year. COVID changed. I'm a performer, so COVID definitely changed the way in which I made my money. And, our contribution to his college education significantly changed. So we weren't quite sure if he was going to be able to return on time, which he was not able to. So this is his first time in his first year being a work-study student, working full-time and also being a student. And helping him through this process has been really interesting. And I bring him up because for all intents and purposes, so y'all know, it's not for all intensive purposes, bless y'all for saying that, but it's intents and purposes. For all intents and purposes, he is an adult. No longer a Black child. He gonna always be my baby, but he's not a Black child per se. I love this opportunity to talk about him because I am still guiding him, obviously, through his journey. But a few things that came up in our conversation is balance, trying to achieve something absent of the ideals and the standards of the outside world. So here you have, it's taken him longer than 4 years to graduate. There is some stigma around that sometimes within our community. Also, too, trying to balance school and work and mental health, and trying to keep up with the expectations and all of the pressure that it seems that we put on our young Black people to be excellent, to step up to the plate, to work 3 times as hard to get half as far. And so we had a very interesting conversation about that. And I'm really looking forward to getting some advice on that as I move forward in the relationship that I have with him. Also, too, in talking about my other young adult, and this is, like I said, I have to share these things with you because I have such a variety of experiences as it comes to educating Black children. My other young adult, who hasn't decided what she wants to do. She's still trying to figure it out. Did not want to go to college, doesn't know what she really wants to do, and supporting that space. I think a lot of times what happens is we forget that it takes a little time for us to develop, understand, and get to know who we are. But Black parenting oftentimes, in my opinion, comes from a lot of fear, a place of a lot of fear. And so we do what we can do in order to, to get our children where they need to go. So that's my second oldest. Now, here we go with my senior. Oh, yeah, baby. And it's time for those college applications, deciding where we want to go to school. And I'm going to tell y'all something. I learned a big lesson with my oldest when we were trying to figure out where he was going to go to college. We got caught up in the vapors. You know what I'm saying? We got caught up in the hype a little bit. We really wanted him to go to a HBCU. He decided to go to a HBCU. It was one of the more pricier HBCUs. We did what we could do to help him to be as close to debt-free as he possibly could. But with this new child, what we've learned is that going into debt for education is a serious decision. And so as we have now another opportunity to make decisions concerning education, and particularly higher education, with our child, we're thinking about it. We're like, I don't know. Why don't you go a little closer to home? Why don't you do in-state school? All of these things are things you have to consider, especially in Black families, when we all know that Black families are not, on average, earning 1/4 of the family income as the average white family. We all know that, families that are headed by women, that women are being paid, I want to say 60 cents to the dollar, maybe a little less than that, in terms of what they're getting, paid in the world and what they have access to in order to pay for education. So a lot of these things come into play in Black families in ways that they do not in other families, particularly white families. So I am dealing with that in my home. And I know y'all like, dag, Aja, that's a lot. It is a lot. It's an awful lot. But I'm not even finished yet. I have 13-year-old twins who are 8th graders. And if you live in Philadelphia, you know that 8th grade is the time when many parents opt to apply for magnet schools. And I can't wait to have this conversation with the sister Tamara Anderson today about that process and how stressful it can be, about the perceptions of parents. Because I tell you, if you ask the average parent, and this is probably all over the country, if you ask the average parent how they feel about their neighborhood school, amen, they're going to tell you a horror story. And I promise you that the young people are hearing you. They hear the conversations you're having about your neighborhood school, and they are terrified. And so it creates a very different kind of stress on our young people about getting into a magnet school. So this is also a conversation that I'm having at my home. You're like, how, Aja, that's a lot. It's okay, y'all. Y'all just pray for me. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I'm not done. I have a 6th grader, 11 years old, going into 6th grade. He goes to his neighborhood school. I like it. I've had issues, as we all do, with the public school system, but I've had wonderful relationships with teachers. I've also had some disastrous relationships as well. Or I wouldn't say disastrous relationships, more so incidents, if you will, with the public school system and with my youngest son. But I'm concerned about him too. He's a boy. We know how young Black boys are cute. They're cute. They're adorable. They're so sweet. Everything's all good until, baby, they get to be about so tall, and they get about so weight, and they get to so that particular space where you don't know how he will be perceived in a school environment as well as the world. And so we harken back to so many of the experiences with like Tamir Rice and the ways that we know our young boys are out here in the world presented. So yeah, lots of stuff on my plate. And I'm hoping that through these stories that I've just told, maybe you have seen a reflection of your own children and your own questions and and perhaps throughout this conversation, we can shed some light on all of those experiences so that, we could just get a better take on what we're going to do about our children. I want you guys to hang in there. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking with Dr. Kamika Royal. Y'all hang in there. You're listening to WURD, and this is The Source.
Whatever the world brings, we're always moving forward. Reinventing business, reimagining home, and reemphasizing community. At PICO, we're redefining support, finding new ways to provide financial assistance, supporting opportunities for good jobs, and uplifting our communities. We're by your side through it all, because whatever the future holds, you're ready to take it on, and we're ready to power it. Find the support you need at pico.com.
Are you looking to hire diverse talent? WURD has got you covered. We just launched a brand new job portal to help connect you with diverse talent in Philadelphia and beyond. If you would like to have your jobs featured on our job portal, give us a call at 215-425-7875 or send us an email at sales@wordradio.com. Check out the job portal today on our livelihood website at wordworks.com. That's WURDworks.com and click jobs.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
Undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD.
You're listening to The Source
on WURD Radio,
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Hey everybody, we're back. You're listening to The Source. My name is Aja Graydon Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders. And today we are talking about educating Black children. And I'm super excited to have this next guest. This is Dr. Kamika Royal. Again, I said she's the Associate Professor of Urban Education at Loyola. Her work focuses on intersections of race, politics, history, and urban school reform. She's currently working on a book about that work, and she is going to be featured in the lineup of the up-and-coming Centering Black Children in Education virtual conference. It's on August 10th through the 14th, and her particular talk will be on exploring the purpose of school. Welcome to The Source, Dr. Royal.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you. I think that for the most part, and I don't know, I'm not sure if this is the case everywhere, but the word reform can be such a trigger. People keep thinking it's like a controversial term, like that people are somewhat exhausted, with quote unquote fixing structures. And, we've heard, when we're talking about like police reform and stuff, people are saying, no, it's too bad. There's no room for that. I want to jump right in here and ask you, do you think in terms of these schooling systems, can they be saved in their current state? Or are we looking at a complete wipeout and restructuring?
Asia, can they be saved? I don't know that I can answer that with an easy yes or no. My question is saved for what? It depends on what we intend to do with our schools, to have our children walk away from schools with, which is why more and more I advocate having conversations around what do we even think is the purpose of school. Because everybody isn't operating schools or sending their children to schools for the same purposes or working with schools for the same purposes. People are working at competing in very different purposes. In their current iteration, do I think schools can be saved? Unfortunately, I don't. I think that they do serve an important function in society and culture, but the more I research schools, and I'm going into my 23rd year as an educator, the more I research schools, the more I think the really important children, what black children really need is going to come from outside of school.
I mean, I'm not really that surprised with that because, you know, most times within the black community, most of the things that our children need, that our families need, that we need, we provide them for each other. They come outside of these systems. So we figure out what we're going to do and we do it. Is there a devaluing of just kind of the ways in which we kind of focus on that mutual aid kind of mentality? Have we downplayed that in our community? Do we need to refocus on that as a source for education for our kids?
To some extent, I would say there's a devaluing, you know, and I don't want to, it's never my goal or my desire to sort of dash how black people move around in this world that was created in a lot of ways on our backs. But I think, you know, we exist in a capitalist society, right? We exist in something that's all about competition and exploitation and having an edge over someone else. And that is, it's hard to do that and be concerned with mutual aid. You know, you can't see your brother and sister as your competition if we are, if we're trying to work together to move us collectively forward.
I want to explore that word competition a little bit because, and I want to hear a little bit more your thoughts on what you mean by that, because what I've taken from it a little bit is that I did mention in the intro to the show that for my 8th graders, this applying for magnet school situation that happens in Philadelphia does become or feel like a competition. You are competing with other students for the best possible education. So I want to know if that is that what you meant by that? And just to kind of help our parents understand a little bit more about how you're talking about how the capitalist mentality infiltrates our education.
Well, Asia, so, you know, I'm from Philly, right? So I remember going through that process back in 1990, 1991, so 30 years ago. Which I think in some ways, you know, the process is probably better now. There are more options now, but that doesn't mean the system or structure of separating, sorting, and stratifying our children is any better, because it isn't. Of course, every parent wants the best for their child. However, as somebody who attended Central High School, which is one of the oldest high schools in the country, founded in 1836, you know, there's a way, especially when there were fewer magnet schools in Philadelphia, there's a way that resources were sent to those sort of special edition magnet schools. And there's a way that students at Central, Girls High, engineering science to an extent, Masterman especially, got things that other students didn't get. And so what I've had to do over the course of becoming an education professional and thinking about some of these issues is think about the ways that I was privileged, that me going to Central meant I got some things that the kids going to Bartram, which was my neighborhood high school, did not get. That there was something special set aside for those of us who attended Central because we were seen as special. But also that meant that students who were going to Bartram were seen as less than special and somehow less deserving of those additional resources. So it's complicated, right? Because as a parent, of course you want the best for your child, but every parent wants the best for their child. So the question, because if you don't know enough about, you know, how to even navigate this system, does that mean your child shouldn't have the best? Right? Like, and so right. That's where we have to start to think about what does mutual aid even look like? I don't blame people for choosing, you know, programs that they think will adequately prepare their children, but I think you have to think about what happens to the children who don't go to those schools and what do they get?
Yeah, and I can imagine also too on the other side of things that though that's a necessary thought to have, that it can be really difficult for Black parents to think about the whole of Black children. I mean, I know we all think we do, right? But there's still this feeling of like, look, I got to take care of this person that I got standing in front of me, you know? And I understand that, you know, that can be a kind of a difficult thing to do when you are focused on your kid. Are there some things we can keep in mind as parents and some actions that we can take? Just maybe even just some small steps that we can take to advocate for the whole of Black students across the district, you know, without stressing ourselves out too much. Because, you know, Black folks already got enough stuff on their back.
Absolutely. I would say one of the things parents can definitely do is get with parent groups that are already, you know, working in the schools. So I want to say it's called Parents United. So there are politicians right now in Philadelphia, local government, who came up through parent organizing groups. So I'm thinking about Helen Dim. I'm thinking about Kendra Brooks. I'm thinking about Tamika Anglin, right? These folks started out 15, 16, 20 years ago fighting for children, Black and brown children, in school, right?
Yeah.
So there are groups. These are the folks who, I want to say 10, 12 years ago, were resisting the conversion of Steele Elementary School to become a mastery school. So there are groups existing that already have strategies, plans, playbooks around how to push the district into preserving something that is community-centered, that actually values the people who live there instead of displacing them and further marginalizing them. So I would say one of the easiest things to do instead of starting something new is actually to get with those organizations that are already doing that work.
Yeah, and I love how you made how you talked about how they can be feeders into public service and the folks that are going to be making these decisions. Because I think a lot of times, and we talked about obviously recently, the big conversations were participating in local elections and being concerned about who you vote for. And if we're feeding from parent groups into public service and they're having conversations around policy, this is a perfect opportunity for you to use your actual vote to create an environment for the whole of the Black student population in Philadelphia. I'm curious to know what are some of the kind of prevalent perceptions that parents hold that you have come across in your work that harm their children that we need to kind of ditch?
Say that again. What are some of the prevalent?
Some of the things that some of the perceptions that parents have about school, or some of the beliefs that parents hold about school that you've come across in your work that actually harm our children. Some of the things we may need to ditch, some traditional ways of thinking about school, or maybe just some toxic things we think about school that you've seen come up in your work that parents need to let go of.
So as somebody who is not a parent, I try very hard not to criticize parents. However, I will say over time, some of the things I've seen, you know, because parents are people who bring their own sort of history and experience to parenting and to working with schools. I have seen parents who have maybe been mistreated, underserved in their own school experiences, who then approach school from a very sort of in like warrior status, right? So before you ever know what's actually happening with the school, you already cast everybody in the school as your enemy. You know?
Yeah, you on one. Parents who show up on one.
Absolutely. You know, I had a parent, now this was 15 years ago when I was teaching high school, but I called a parent to talk to her about how her student, you know, wasn't doing well. It wasn't the first time I talked to the parent, but the parent, you know, said to her daughter, you know, this lady better not call my house again. Like, you better not get this lady to leave it. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, like, we done had some nice conversations about your daughter. You know, like, I might want to call about that. She was like, don't ring my phone. And I was like, you know what, sis, it's your phone. Don't even worry about it. Like, I won't do it. But I think just, you know, I can understand why people, my own mother my mother is a graduate of Germantown High School, which was closed in 2013. She was mistreated as a student at Leeds and at Germantown. And, you know, initially she tried to approach schools in Philly from a sort of open perspective, but when she felt like they were underserving my sister, who was in the first grade at the time, she took us out of public school and put us in private school. So I think sometimes, as we talk about the trauma people have dealt with, I think sometimes, and I don't know where these spaces are, but a space for healing for parents to sort of say, I have these experiences as a student, but, those experiences may not be the same experiences my child is going to have. Some other things I've seen with parents, because one of the things I've done in the last 23 years is walk with people who were trying to figure out things for their school. I think while I don't think parents need to approach the school from a warrior status, I also don't think parents need to take whatever the school is telling them on its face. I think parents need to do their own research. So when a school is telling you, we have our classes of track, and your child didn't score well in math, and so that's why we have them in level 3 classes, you can ask questions about, okay, so tell me exactly where my child wasn't doing well in math. Like, what are the specific, competencies? And I'll give you for instance. A few years ago, I was a teacher coach in Baltimore, and one of my cousins had just moved to Baltimore, and her daughter was in the 5th grade. So I went to observe her in class, and it's 5th grade, and they were doing single-digit addition and subtraction. And I was like, this is not, now I taught middle school language arts, but I know math. I know math enough to know that in the 5th grade, we shouldn't be doing single-digit addition and subtraction. So I said, well, maybe her skills are just low. And so when I start watching her do the work, not only were her skills not that low, knowing that her table skills was that low, they were all poor. And so when I inquired, this is what the teacher told me, like, oh, she tested, low, and this group of kids is in the 3rd, sort of tier. Okay, so what is the entry point for their skills? What are the skills that you expected them to have that they don't have? What's happening there, right? Are you telling me that this is appropriate? Because this feels like it's not going to get her where she needs to be. You're doing something, you're having them do something they can do, but how's that going to get them to where they need to be? And the teacher couldn't do that. Now, my cousin, the mom, was like, well, the school told her, well, your daughter's disorganized, and this is why she's in this math class. And I'm like, she is disorganized, but she's also 10, right?
That part.
So 10-year-olds do tend to, lose glasses and, can't find their homework, things like that. Like, we teach them certain behaviors, but the professionals who are paid to teach your children need to be actually teaching them and challenging them to improve their skills, not merely feeding them what they can already do.
Right.
So I would say, don't take what they tell you on its face. You need to ask more questions about how is my child going to get to the next level. If my child is struggling, okay, tell me exactly where my child is struggling and what's the plan, right? What's your plan? And I'll work with somebody as a parent to come up with my plan. But it can't just be your child is struggling and, that's why we have him where he is. Okay, well, how are we going to move them out of that? Because the struggle right now doesn't mean it has to be a permanent struggle.
Right. I mean, the idea of asking questions and staying on top of these things is, at the top of the list, in my opinion, also about how parents can move their children forward. But a lot of times our parents do take teachers and the building and the administrators at face value. They value their opinions more. Children might speak out about something and not be heard, and the parent immediately puts the value on what the adult has said, what the teacher has said. So asking questions, I mean, I 100% agree with that, in addition to also kind of listening to the feedback from your kids. I'm curious to know this. Black parents who are trying to figure out the best way to school their children are, have a couple of different choices at this point in time. When we were younger, it was public or it was private, right? Or maybe Catholic school or something like that. Now they put into the mixed charter schools, and then you have also 2 programs like ABC program where students can test and go to private schools and things of that nature. Sometimes they go away to boarding schools. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on some of these choices. And is there one out of these choices that you think is particularly best for Black students? Or do you think we just haven't even figured out what's best for Black students yet?
Ooh. I don't think there's a universal best for Black students. So let me start with that. In terms of ABC, that you're talking about the A Better Chance program?
Yes, A Better Chance.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know A Better Chance is a program in which, and let me make sure I say this properly because I did not look it up, which I should have, so y'all forgive me. Students who are typically high academic performing students get a part of a program in which they are able to apply to private schools and boarding schools. And oftentimes what it does, in my opinion, is kind of skim off these kind of high performing Black students out of public school, which can be a little bit difficult because then, oh goodness. Sorry, forgive me, everyone. I think there's some sort of car outside. But anyhow, they tend to skim these really high performing students off the top, and it can affect overall how public school students perform and how it looks like they perform. At least that's my opinion. But yeah, that's the ABC program as far as I know.
So I wanted to clarify because, funny enough, I was recruited by the ABC program 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. But because I was just coming out of Christian school in the suburbs of Philadelphia, the last thing I wanted to do was be in another private school. I was like, absolutely not. I begged my mother not to make me go to one of those schools. Mm-hmm. The creaming you're talking about that sort of pulling out these top-performing students to private schools, to some extent, that's the same argument people use around special admission magnet schools.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I don't disagree with you that that's what happens. I mean, even when we think about Bartram, Overbrook, places that used to have scholars programs, they had their own programs within the school for excellent students 30 years ago. Now most of those programs are gone. They had music programs, they had different, health science programs, they had different vocational programs so students could start to pursue their options. In terms of what makes most sense for Black children, I think
I'm sorry. You know what? Hold that just one moment. You're talking about what makes the most sense for Black children. Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. I got to take a break. When we come back, I want you to finish that thought. Okay? Thank you. I'm so sorry. Hey, guys, we'll see you guys on the other side of this break. You're listening to The Source. This is Age of Great and Dancer. We'll see you in a few.
This WURD Wellness Vignette is brought to you by AARP. WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness
and motivation.
This is Halana, your resident expert health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of finding a new way to be social. So, we now live in a world where socialization has changed significantly, and we have to be creative on how we maintain and grow our social networks. Health and wellness also means having a healthy social life. Many of us get so wrapped up in work responsibilities that we forget to connect with our loved ones and friends. Finding a new way to be social can look like this. Schedule a weekly check-in with your extended family via telephone or even video chat. Number 2, write letters to your friends and start a new pen pal group. Take it old school. Number 3, use technology for you. Create a group chat for your close friends where you can share highlights and funny moments throughout the day. Finding a new way to be social is something we can all do to support our overall health, personally and in our communities. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy, healthy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com. This WURD Wellness Vignette was brought to you by AARP Pennsylvania.
Family Therapy Vignette Moments with Dr. Lucille Ijoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you complete a job, you feel so much better. You'll sleep better. You'll feel satisfied. You may even cook a fancy meal and share it with a neighbor when you complete a job. You will rest better and breathe. Breathe, everybody. Let me hear you breathe. Whew, breathe again. Breathe again. It's very important to breathe. Say, you have completed a job. Well, after the job is completed, it's time to dance. It's time to tap your feet. And you're going to listen to something called Shake, Rattle, and Roll by Joe Turner. Here it comes.
Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Well, you won't do right. Save your doggone soul.
Save the date. Thursday, August 26th for WURD Radio's annual Founders Day celebration, honoring the life of our founder, Walter P. Lomax Jr., MD.
This year will be both in person and virtual.
Stay tuned to WURD Radio and WURDradio.com for more information.
That's Thursday, August 26th for our annual Founders Day celebration.
Exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Streaming live on WordRadio.com, the WURD Radio app,
or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube.
You're listening to The Source
on WURD Radio,
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Okay, folks, welcome back. You are listening to The Source. I'm Aja Graydon Dantzler. For those of you who are just tuning in, I am here filling in for Andrea Lawful Saunders while she is out. And today we're talking about educating Black children. And we were just speaking with Dr. Kamika Royal, and she was just going to give us her thoughts on, you know, the choices that are out here for Black parents amongst the public, charter, private, Catholic, religious background, just giving us some of her thoughts on how to choose kind of the best environment. She started out by saying she didn't really have a across the board best for Black students. So I wanted her to finish her thoughts on that.
Yep. So I think it depends on what it is you want for your children, what you, your family, your children want for themselves. And I'm not even necessarily talking about career-wise, but I'm talking about how you want your children to think about life, how you want them to think about learning, how you want people to talk to your children and to interact with them. What I believe in a liberatory approach to schooling. I believe in schooling for liberation, something that is about our collective humanity, not that's about competition. But that may not be the way that you or others view schools. So I would ask about the centrality of things like grades, how classes are organized, what's the likelihood that your child can get enrichment that they may need and deserve, or extra support that they may need and deserve without being stigmatized around that. How does the school foster cooperation, academic support for one another, building community with one another? How does the school develop skills beyond just school, right? So we think about how does school prepare my child for life outside of school. When we think about some of the violence that's happening in our community, how are schools not just teaching students algebra, but also teaching them how to solve complex problems with other human beings so they're not picking up weapons, and harming our community. Those are the things.
And you said a word there, because obviously that is, on the forefront of the conversation here in Philadelphia. We actually have a caller that has a question for you. Okay. This is Woody from Philadelphia. You have a question for Dr. Royal?
Yes, ma'am, I sure do. I just wanted to congratulate both you ladies that are so interested in education, and it's beautiful because as I was listening to Dr. Royal, I think she went to some of the higher schools through her public school education in Philadelphia. You didn't go to regular public school, is that correct?
No, I went to Pepper Middle School, which was very regular.
Okay, but I'm saying after you got to high school, you said you went to Central, basically, and some of the schools that are, noted for doing a little bit better. Okay, so in the process, are you aware that out of Philadelphia, I think there's 52 high schools, and out of those 52 high schools, only 7 are doing above E. The reading proficiency in our city of Philadelphia is 30% illiteracy in Philly. There's a lot of things that are going on with the basic format of public education, particularly if I were to say anything else to you, it would pertain to elementary education. Once kids get the elementary education, that's the key to everything. Once you get past 1 to 3rd, 1 to 5th, now you have something to build on. If you miss that, like you were saying, the young lady or the child that was in 5th grade doing regular math, not doing regular math for their age, that's where you get lost. And most of the kids, many of them are graduating these high schools with diplomas as receipts for educational services never rendered. Now, I mention this quite a bit because I understand that this is a problem. anytime President Trump mentioned African Americans, what the hell do you have to lose? Your schools are messed up. You can't get money from your banks. You're being gentrified out your neighborhoods. This is just a continuum of going to have to fail. This is not talking about the children. It's talking about the system. So I want to know, what can we do to get better elementary education in our public schools?
One of the things I would suggest for elementary schools, especially in neighborhoods that are more economically challenged, is to actually put more people and more resources in those schools. And what usually happens is the opposite. So whereas class size may be 30 students per teacher, in some of our poorest neighborhoods in Philadelphia, I would actually recommend that we have something like 10 students per teacher. If you are really concerned about literacy rates and numeracy rates, when you know that families are already sending their children to schools with different stressors, you wouldn't stack so many children into a classroom for teachers to have to deal with so many at one time. The fewer amount of students, the more the teacher can tailor their instruction to those students in the elementary school. But that's not something we ever see at the elementary level, especially in Philadelphia, which has been just cutting for the last 50, 60 years.
Is going to do, because this area is being gentrified now. So all of these improvements that you see in Philadelphia aren't for the people that are presently there. It's for the future that they see, which is going to be people with more money. And coming here from all the different parts of the world and the country. That's why they're gentrifying the neighborhood, and they're bringing up the real estate taxes. Ridiculous. You won't be able to stay in your home. So all of this is tying in with the educational structure. And I just thank you for what you've done thus far. I thank Miss Asia for filling in for my favorite person, Andrea. And I just wanted to say hopefully she has a wonderful vacation, and I look forward to hearing more from you guys.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Woody, for calling in and asking that great question. We're into kind of the end of our interview. We have a few more minutes left, but I do want to ask you this. I'm super excited about this upcoming conference. It's called Centering Black Children Virtual Conference. Can you kind of tell us about the conference and how you became involved and what we can expect from your talk there?
Right. So it's coming. It's a virtual conference, which means it's open to everybody, right? Except they did say they have to shut it down at 3,000 registrants, and I think they were inching toward that. But it comes out of Eastern Michigan University, where my good friend, Dr. Rima Reynolds-Vassar, is an associate professor of educational leadership. And last November, she was elected to the Board of Trustees for Michigan State University. So Rima and I are colleagues. And she wanted to do a conference convening Black women in particular, with a few other folks here and there, around what makes the most sense for Black children. And Rima and I have been friends for about 10 years, and when she told me this is what she was going to do, this is how we got involved. So that's how I got involved with it. And she asked me, what did I want to teach on? And I'm like, I feel like we need to have more conversations around what even is the purpose of school. What purpose are we operating around? Getting clear, asking ourselves the question, why do I think school exists?
I think it's really interesting because, and this is something I just learned this year, so I don't want to be one of those people that spit something out like they always knew it. But I thought it was pretty fascinating that even the experiment of trying to educate an entire population of people is fairly new. It's something that's post-slavery. I mean, that really the idea of having a public school comes from the experiment in trying to educate a population of formerly enslaved people. So I think that's pretty amazing when you think about it, that we're still trying to figure things out, essentially. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I definitely think we're trying to figure things out. I think about, Horace Mann with his common school movement that he was pushing while slavery was still the law of the land in this country. And one of the things I always ask my students is, what do you think that means, that the person who was pushing the common school movement and the idea of school that's the great equalizer, right, that we're saying that while human beings are living in chains and while it is illegal to teach them the very thing that you're advocating for. And that, it's been less than 200 years. Central was founded in 1836. The school district of Philadelphia had its first schools in 1818. So to some extent, it is fairly new. And types of things that we'll explore in that session on the purpose of school.
So if you guys get an opportunity to get those last few slots in the conference, please do. It's a Centering Black Children in Education virtual conference. It's from August 10th to August 14th. Dr. Kamika Royal, along with several other amazing Black women educators, are going to be talking, and her talk is going to be exploring the purpose of school. Again, I'm super excited about it, and I'm really, really honored that you came and spoke with me today. I learned a lot. I'm looking forward to all that I'm going to learn at this conference, and I just appreciate your work. I know that you're working on a book. We're going to keep an eye out for that. Do you know when it's coming out?
Next spring.
Quickly.
Should be out next spring.
It'll be out next spring. Fantastic. All right, guys, we're going to take another quick break. And you are listening to The Source. Again, I'm Aja Graydon-Dantzler, filling in for Andrea. Come and hang out with us some more.
James Schuler Boxing Gym is now offering youth and team boxing classes beginning Saturday, July 31st. Gain confidence, body strength, camaraderie, and boxing skills. Physical fitness is great for mental and physical health. Go to jamesschulerboxing.com for more info and registration, or call 215-399-7483. That number again is 215-399-7483.
As a community service, WURD Radio and the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium wants to keep you informed about where you can get barrier-free COVID-19 testing and vaccination this week. Tuesday, August 3rd and Thursday, August 5th from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. at Deliverance Evangelistic Church, 2001 West Lehigh Avenue in Philadelphia. For more information, visit blackdoctorsconsortium.com. Stay informed and stay well with WURD Radio.
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Be there this Friday at the Summer Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour and stand with WURD Radio to amplify voices of the Black community as a digital 4WURD member for as low as $5 per month. And receive a free gift for signing up. See you on Friday and join Tiffany Bacon, 10 a.m. till noon at the Marian Anderson Recreation Center, 740 South 7th Street, or visit wordradio.com. Start or renew your 4WURD membership today.
So long, but I know you never had a choice. You're a force, and I know it's a lot on your plate, a lot on your mind, a lot on your life. Just know that you're not alone. Just know hope is never gone. I see that the night is long, and I promise we gon' make it home. I believe we gonna get there. I believe we're gonna get there. I believe in you. I believe in me. I believe in us, and I believe in we.
When you speed through life, you often miss signs. You have to slow down. Pay attention, focus on what's between the lines. You help me see clearer, and I wanna thank you. When I look in the mirror, don't just see myself, I also see you're my fortress. All that I got, so much on your hands, so much on your shoulders, so much on your heart.
Just know that you're not alone.
Know that you're not
Just
alone.
know hope is never gone. I see that the night is long.
I promise you we gon' make it home.
I believe we gonna get there.
Baby, we gonna get there.
I believe we're gonna get there.
That was a song called I Believe. It's from Kindred the Family Soul. And that is also one half of that group is yours truly. This is Aja Grayton Dantzler. And I am filling in for Andrea Lawful Saunders on The Source today. Today, we're talking about educating Black children. I got a lot of Black children. I love Black children. And they are super important to me, of course. And we had an opportunity in that first hour to talk with Dr. Kamika Royal, and she really dropped a lot of gems. Before we really kind of reflect on that, oh, shoot, you know what? Let me go back. Let me backtrack a little bit. That song you just listened to is on our current album, just came out a couple months ago, called Auntie and Unc. If you're watching on Facebook, see the little album right there in the back, Auntie and Unc. Of course, you know I'm Auntie. And so to scooch back forward to the conversation we were having before the break with Dr. Kamika Royal, who is just amazing. I wish I could have talked to her longer, but she is an expert in urban education and school reform. And she dropped quite a few gems on us about early education, about centering class size, especially if you want to see literacy. And that was brought up by the caller that we had, Woody, who called in. She also talked about considering what you feel school is for. What is the purpose of school and the value that you hold in your household? What are you trying to accomplish by sending your children to school? What are the goals? What are the values? And let that be at the core of how you decide how to educate your Black child. Keeping in mind, of course, that as we make certain decisions for our children, that there are inequities that are out there that exist for all Black children, and that as we try our best to focus on our children, that there's a larger population of Black students that need to have those same opportunities, and perhaps they don't have anyone advocating for them. So she talked about joining parent groups and understanding the importance of parent groups and how they feed into who is representing us at city council, who is representing us at the state level, how we are looking at our politicians who are coming out of these parent groups and how they represent us at the policy level. So I think it's really important that we take heed to a lot of this information. I'd also like to backtrack a little bit because, well, not backtrack, but just give you some additional information. We mentioned out of the options for Black students, one of them being the A Better Chance program. And my sister texted me and fussed at me a little bit because I wasn't completely clear on the goal of ABC. And we talked about some of the quote unquote minuses to such a program, but we want to also make sure you guys understand the goal of it. And so my sister writes that my niece and nephew actually went through this program, and that the purpose is to help minority students navigate through the process of getting into private schools and to afford them the opportunity for exposure and access to communities and resources they otherwise may not have access to. So I think that's interesting to talk about because giving children exposure and access to communities and resources that they may not have does kind of add into bring a light to the earlier part of our conversations when it comes to resources. So we definitely want our kids to have access to resources, but we want those resources to be a baseline. If after they are a baseline and you decide, okay, I want my child to attend a school or go into a program regardless, I think that's kind of a different conversation than we are kind of forced in a corner where we know our children may not have access to resources, let's say at their public school or at their neighborhood school, and we're forced to consider pushing them outside of that certain resources should not be delegated solely to private schools or magnet schools or things of that nature, because it just continues to feed the idea that certain students are more special, certain students should have more than others. And typically our students do not fall as a whole in that category based on years of inequities because of them simply being Black and growing up in predominantly Black neighborhoods. But also too, again, this is not in any way to come down on parents who make choices, the best choices they can for their students, because you only have a certain period of time. And so Black parents find themselves in a bit of a pickle because they need to make sure that they're making the best decisions for their children and that they get exposed to the highest level of education that they can. But again, to remind you, even what Dr. Royal was talking about, is that exactly what we want? What is it do we want? And so if you want to chime in on this conversation and tell us what you want, because I'm curious, and I haven't had this conversation with too many parents. I'm curious, what is it that you want from school? I really want to hear from you guys. 215-634-8065. What is it that you're trying to accomplish by sending your child to school? What is the goal? What is the value? I really would like to know that. In a few minutes, we're going to get an opportunity to talk to our next guest, Tamara Anderson. And I'm really looking forward to that conversation too. I talked to you earlier about the idea of being a parent and also being an advocate. This, of course, was brought up by Dr. Royal, what it means to be involved as a parent, what it means to be involved in parent organizations. And Tamara Anderson has actually been involved in quite a few. In fact, I did write this down, so let me make sure I take a look at it properly so I give her her props and that we talk exactly about her background, because it's extensive. Okay, so Tamara Anderson is an advocate for children and teens. She has been a part of several organizations. And so we talk about parent organizations. She's been a part of a committee member for the National Black Lives Matter Week of Action in Schools, a core member of the Racial Justice Organizing Committee, a core organizer of the Black Lives Matter Week at the Schools, Opt Out Philly, and the diversity consultant for the American Association of Physics Teachers. So that's a lot of experience in organizing around students that she's had. And you know, as we talked about it, we realized that, you know, this can be a really important decision that we can make outside of solely centering our energies on our specific student. And so we're really grateful to have her on the show in just a few minutes. But I want to take this time to discuss parental advocacy because, and this is something I would like to hear from some parents here in Philadelphia. There was a program that was implemented for parents to be a little bit more involved with the schools where they were able to be on these school advisory boards, and we call them SAC for short. I was involved with the SAC in my youngest child's school, and I found it to be a cool concept that they did do a lot of changes around and trying to figure out what was the best way to do it. But I think ultimately what we're looking at is a situation where each school has a different makeup, has a different set of students. And the students in the community surrounding that school have specific needs. Perhaps you have a lot of students with English as a second language. Perhaps you have a lot of students that are experiencing poverty. Perhaps you have a lot of students that have, maybe parents that need to be serviced in a certain kind of way. And so I think as we talk about overall ideas about school, overarching ideas about schools, we can also think about this, at a micro level, like what is going on in your community, at your neighborhood school, and how can your school service the specific needs. And so I feel like that the functioning of these SACs can really be used in this way to ask those questions, to engage parents about what it is they need and what it is they want. One of the things that Dr. Royal talked about in the first hour was that sometimes parents bring their own trauma into the classroom, into the school, as they are advocating for their students. And so there aren't many spaces where parents can experience healing around school trauma. I mean, that was pretty amazing to me. When I heard that, I was like, I've never actually heard anyone talk about that. I'm looking forward to, if we have any educators, any members of SACs that are out there listening to the show today, and if we're, any educators that want to chime in on this, I think parents really do need that opportunity to speak on the things that have happened to them. And as we look into individually how we service parents, that we should think about that too. I will say this, there can be some pushback from parents when you get too much in their quote unquote business. A lot of parents have experiences with systems that function very carceral, like DHS or immigration. Places that they are afraid that if they give you too much information about their needs and themselves, that they may become victims. And so this is something really specific to marginalized groups, and something that's really specific, let's say, to Black people and people of color and people who are considered immigrants. And so I think it's really important to think about that as we service young people in the educational system, that we're also realizing that we're serving community, we're serving parents, we're trying to understand their individual needs. And so that has been something that I have witnessed in my experience as well. We did have a caller, but I think she hung up. Diane from South Philly. Diane, if you want to call back, I'm here and waiting to hear back from you. If you want to chime in about how to educate Black children, that's what we're talking about today. You can call 215-634-8065. We talk about trauma with parents in school, okay? I'll tell you guys a little story about my experience because I did both. When I was younger, and this is something that I realize is not the norm. When I was in kindergarten through 6th grade, I grew up, I'm actually not from Philadelphia. A lot of people think I'm from Philadelphia, but I'm not. I'm from Washington, D.C. Shout outs to D.C. if we have any folks listening from D.C. When I was in kindergarten through 6th grade, I went to a school that was predominantly Black. Now, we did have a little bit of diversity in that we were in a community that was near a Jewish temple. And so we did have a few white students, a handful of white students and parents that lived in the community and that attended the school. But it was a predominantly Black school, and every single staff member on staff at my school was a Black woman. I'm gonna say it again. Almost every single staff member, with the exception of the head of maintenance, was a Black woman. My principal was a Black woman. Every teacher from kindergarten to 6th grade was a Black woman. We did have one white teacher at one point, but for the most part, during my experience there, everyone who taught me was a Black woman. My gym teacher was a Black woman. My science teacher was a Black woman. My music teacher was a Black woman. Even my gifted and talented teacher, and we talked about the existence of gifted programs within the public schools with Dr. Royal, and that happened too. But everyone on staff was a Black woman. Even our school counselor and my gym teacher were both Black women. It was a very unique situation, very nurturing. I tell people as a kid, I might come to school and my mother would pull my hair tight. Y'all know how y'all pull those edges. That used to be a thing. Those ballies, that hair be pulled so tight so it could be neat all day. My 2nd grade teacher would loosen my ballies every day and then re-put them on so that I could preserve my edges. And as y'all can see, if you're watching on Facebook, she did God's work. I still have them. Barely, but I do still have them. Anyway, the experience that I had, was deeply nurturing. You have a lot of, there was no cultural breakdown. There was none of that. Well, when I got to 5th grade, I had a teacher named Miss Mayo who thought that I was gifted. And she told me to apply to private school, which I did. And when I got into the school, I had a partial scholarship to a private school in Washington, D.C., which I went there in 7th grade. When I got there, I literally academically crashed and burned. And looking back on that situation, I've always wondered, and I just started thinking about this a few years ago, what made me crash and burn in that situation? I know that I wasn't confused about the rigor. I know that. But when I think about what were the reasons why I suddenly could not function well in this school, and again, I'm talking about my personal experience, but I would really like everyone who's listening to think about the individual ways in which kids thrive and what they need to do well. I went to a predominantly white, well, almost completely white private school. It was supposed to be the quote unquote best, and I did not do well. And looking back on that, I think perhaps that I just could not relate. I had come from such a nurturing and Black and beautiful environment that had its issues, of course, because we're not here to romanticize, completely Black environments, but we do want to be clear that how your children learn and the environment in which they learn is deeply important. We have another caller, Maurice from Southwest. Hi, Maurice. You want to chime in on about this Black children and how we educate them?
Oh, yes, I do. Not only am I a fan, but I want to be a friend right now.
Well, come on, friend.
Okay, let's break this down. We can't never, first of all, Philadelphia should have one of the best school systems in the country. We shouldn't even have to be worrying about going to a private school when we put $1 billion into a school system. And we don't have that many schools like we had before. I remember getting a better education when we had twice as many schools, but we had teachers. I remember having Black teachers back in the 70s. I don't understand what's going on now by us having a superintendent that's Black. How come he's not going across the country trying to bring in some of the best Black teachers he can bring in? I never hear him talk about that, And also, one time I was talking to Dr. Umar. I know you heard of him.
I have, yes.
And I was complaining about Dr. Height, and he set me straight by saying, it's not Dr. Height, it's the system. You won't get 1,000 Dr. Heights, but if the system is broken, how you think your kids was going to learn anything? And, I had to think about that, and you know what? He was right, because, we supposed to have had a elected school board. We was fooled into thinking that we was going to be that, but it is actually who Kenny likes and not who we like. I mean, we can put some candidates up there, but he still has the final pick, and some of the people that's on the school board now is from the old school board. So how are you making it better? And we also have a Black woman on there who I thought would be leading the charge, named Oates, who we seem to never get to interview or talk to her about how do you think the program is going, because she disappears. She only comes on certain shows. So I just think as Black children, now this is when it comes on us. We got to look in the mirror for ourselves. When I went to school, I knew how to read, write, and knew that my parents wanted me to be the best before I even went to school. And that's the problem right now. We use school as a babysitting program, not as a using it as a teaching element for our children. If our kids come home with no books and nothing and say they don't have no homework, a friend of mine that's your person that's running the board there informed me they should be putting their kid in the car and going right back to the school and wondering why they ain't got no homework. These are the things that's our job. We can't always say, well, they're not teaching our kid, but what's our part that we play? Why are we allowing the school board to teach our kids or not teach our kids? That's the problem. How many school board meetings have we go to? How come we're not asking, why ain't they learning this? Why ain't they learning that?
Well, yeah, I mean, Dr. Royal was pretty explicit when she said, you can't take every single thing you hear at face value. It's a conversation. And we're allowing ourselves to find that middle ground between communicating with the school in such a way that says, okay, I'm beginning a conversation. So I'm asking questions. I'm not coming in there on one. Everybody is not an enemy. We're not bringing our trauma into the school. But what we are doing is being clear about our ability to ask questions and dig deep so that we can find these answers for our students. Thank you so much, Maurice, for calling in. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another caller on. We have Brother Spread Love from Philadelphia online too. How you doing?
God bless Empress Kid. Thanks. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, give God the glory. Thank you for coming on and filling in for Empress Andrea. That's banging. And thank you for the show today. The subject matter is banging. And thank you for that song.
Thank you. Thank you. 3 bangings in a row. I'm feeling good. All right, Brother Spread Love. We got a few minutes before our break. Let us know what you got to say.
Thank you so very much. As always, I got to say thank you to our brother Mike on the boards, always doing an amazing job. the entire WRD family, everyone working to make it better. All those suffering, you know, our hearts are with them as always. All incarcerated, especially incarcerated falsely. Free Mumia. I wanted to volunteer real quick, something I'm just, you know, been feeling regarding what's going on with not just the school but our people, but specifically in the school systems. And y'all touching on it too, so I'm not saying it to be redundant. But vested and invested interest in our well-being and our excellence. And I don't mean like pretentious excellence. I mean like us excelling, finding out where, you know, our talents and skills, passion and abilities are, and honing them and nurturing them. And that's what I think you were saying. You enjoyed being in Washington, D.C. with that school system because you could feel it. It didn't have to be articulated so much because it was natural. It was innate. You know, we the people of the vibe. If you know John Holt, that reggae artist, bless his soul, he the bomb. He got a song, I Want a Love I Can Feel. We can feel it. So when we feel the alternative, you know what I mean? That's like, as a musician, you know what I mean? It's discordant.
Yeah, of course.
It's not harmonized. And I ain't saying that to be profound, but just, you know, God bless if that conversation could be on the table too. Because when the children feel that, you know, like,
Yeah, I mean, when children feel and understand it, when children feel things in alignment, when they feel loved, appreciated, and heard, you're going to see a big difference in the way that they retain information, how they learn, what they want to learn about. But we also have to be brave enough as a community to step outside and push back on some of these systems in order to get that result. And I think sometimes we do get caught up in the fear of what will happen to our children, but we can see what's currently happening to our children, and something is not working. Thank you, Brother Spread Love. I appreciate you calling in.
Kids you out of glory. And you know what, you're right about that, because, you know, not to take up the time, but ever since the pharmaceutical industries been in bed with the academic industries, we've seen a lot of things change. So you're right, we got to hit the nail on the head regarding, you know, like even in your house, you got to sweep out the floor and whatnot in order to consider it clean. You know what I mean?
Of course, of course. Thank you so much. And, you know, like I said, you know, everybody, today we're talking about educating Black children. And if you want to hear more of this kind of content, of course, you can tune into Andrea when she returns, and you can stand with WURD, the only Black-owned talk radio station in Pennsylvania. Do you know that you can join the Forward Movement and amplify voices of the Black community as a digital member for as low as $5 per month? Visit WURDradio.com, or you can call 215-425-7875. We need you. We need you to show your support. Join or renew your Forward membership today. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll see you on the other side with our next guest. This is Aja Graydon Dantzler filling in for Andrea on The Source.
Build skills needed for employment through the Philadelphia Skills Forward Initiative, a free upskilling program for workers displaced by the pandemic, those whose jobs are at risk for automation, and Black and brown workers. Complete courses focused on digital literacy, career management, and professional skills for a successful career. Get started today at chamberphl.com.
Join WURD for the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour. This year we celebrate West Oak Lane, Mantua, North, West, and South Philly. I'm Tiffany Bacon, and I'll broadcast live from a different neighborhood each Friday from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. Our next stop is South Philly at the Marian Anderson Rec Center, 740 South 17th Street on Friday, August 6th. Enjoy live performances, meet special guests, and stand with WURD. Be a part of the movement to amplify the voice of the Black community. Show your support and join or renew your Forward membership on site. That's the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour at the Marian Anderson Rec Center from 10 a.m. until 12 noon on Friday, August 6th. WURD, showing love this summer.
The WURD Radio Neighborhood Love Tour is sponsored by Comcast and supported by Pico, Keystone First, and Ready Set Philly.
You're listening to The Source
on WURD Radio,
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to The Source. This is Aja Graydon Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Saunders, and today we're talking about educating Black children. It is a big question, has a lot of layers. No way we could even really scratch the surface just on today's show, but we are going to really attempt to try to get down as much as we possibly can. I told you guys earlier in the show, I have 6 children. I feel like I've been a part of many, I've been a part of many school buildings, organizations, and things of that nature. I've had successful situations with my children, and I have had disastrous situations with my children. I've been through it all. And I'm excited to have this next guest because I think she has a really great perspective on this, being an educator, a parent, and an advocate. We have Tamara Anderson on the phone. She is an advocate for children and teens, an anti-racist trainer. She's a professional artist, editor, freelance journalist, and educator. She's a former Philadelphia public and charter school teacher. She's a current adjunct professor at Westchester University and in the education policy department. She is the founding and steering committee member for National Black Lives Matter Week of Action in the Schools, core member of the Racial Justice Organizing Committee, core organizer of the Black Lives Matter Week at Schools, Opt Out Philly, and a diversity consultant for the American Association of Physics Teachers. Welcome to the show, Tamara Anderson.
Hello.
How you doing?
I am good and excited to talk about this topic. Just listening to you, I was like, oh, I've had all those situations with my child. So yes. Mm-hmm.
Girl, and we had a nice, good pre-conversation. I want y'all to know that because we have so much in common because you're also an artist as well. So you and I have plenty in common in this moment as we talk about this subject matter. So we're going to jump right into it. As an educator and a parent, I know you've experienced a lot of things on both sides, Can you just give us, and I always like to talk about the mistakes first because this is what we need to do. We need to talk about our mistakes first. So I just want to know, what are some of the misconceptions held on both sides? So what are some things that educators are not seeing and understanding about parents? And what are some things that parents are not seeing and understanding about the educational system and the folks that are working for that system?
So I would like to really say, as a teacher, especially when I started teaching, let's talk about that. Because, we have this illusion that teachers just come in and know how to teach, right?
Right.
That can be further from the truth. We are figuring it out. Some of us have a knack.
I mean, I put y'all on a pedestal as a child. I probably carried that into my adult life. So I'm going to tell you that right now. Y'all are most definitely looked upon as if you float on water. So we'll go there.
Yes. And so I think for me, coming into teaching, the first thing I had to get rid of was what I had learned about classroom management in school. I had to, and I was fortunate. My mom is a retired teacher, taught for over 30 years in science. And my first year of teaching, me and my mother actually taught the same topic. And the same grade level. I don't think most people have this. This is a blessing. Let me say that. Yeah. So the first thing my mom was like, one thing I remembered my mom did in her class is that she had lots of great relationships. Relationships she focused a lot on relationships, not on the curriculum, not on what she was teaching. She was like, all that comes later. And once I started doing that, I stopped losing my voice, screaming and yelling at people. I stopped getting sick from just exhaustion because I was like, I don't know what to do next. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All those things got easier when I literally realized that these little human beings are separate human beings. And they require as much, personalization as you can give them. Now, of course, I've also worked in public schools where I had 35 kids a class or 40 kids a class. So you're like, how is that? That makes it impossible. That is when you really lean into family connection, right? I would get to know their siblings. Sometimes I get to know their siblings just because I know their siblings will rat them out at home. Let me be real. Like, you know, it was a reason. Or I would get to know their siblings to know if it's not mom or pop, who is the person that they most fear at the house? Oh, you got to call my auntie. Mm-hmm. Tell her what happened.
Yeah.
Or she'll talk to you. And so that means that I was building trust and building a community in my classroom, right? And building community in my school. I will also say that there's always, I feel like there's a purposeful wedge that is put between parents and families and schools. And some of it has to do with that some of our parents haven't had the best experience at school themselves. So
yeah, we talked about that before in the first hour, that can be a huge, you know, barrier between the success of a student is what kind of trauma the parent comes with.
Ooh, educational trauma is real. It's real. And as a teacher, you have to recognize, is that what it is? And if it is, how can I still help this child succeed or at least achieve? Like, you know, you have to actually be like this problem solver on your feet all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like teachers have to constantly be lifelong learners of lots of things: psychology, anthropology, spirituality. You know, I'm not putting no position on stuff, but you need to have all these things because it helps you literally connect with. Some children will come to you, they're totally empath. Like they cry at the drop of a hat. You're like, what's going on? It's because they are.
I think I got one of those at my house.
They take everything in.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to teach them how to breathe and how to be quiet and how to be still.
So let me ask you this. I feel like that brings up in my mind two things: professional development, what that looks like, and as you talk about professional development, who are you developing professionally, and what did they, how did they, you know, what is their concept, you know, culturally as it pertains to Black students?
You didn't say a word.
So, I mean, what you're saying ultimately is that teachers have to be long-time learners. They don't come in understanding exactly what they're dealing with. They need support. So on that end of things, how as parents we might be able to break down some of this barrier is understanding what educators need to service our children and advocate for the educators themselves.
Yes, and I also think, why is it that professional developments aren't given to educators by parents and caregivers?
Woo!
Why do we not tap that resource? Why do we not ask, you know, the parent, you know, you got that one parent that everybody's kids go to their house, right?
Right. Or at least all the kids know that parent.
Right. There's something magical. There's something about that parent that maybe they can do obsession simply on relationship building. That's not connected to some higher ed. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm not negating research. It's just there's something about the practice of it, right?
Ooh.
What does that look like? And that takes us even back to our history. Like sometimes as Black people, we have also forgotten our history in education. Yeah. Our history in those one-room schoolhouses, and when we were enslaved and was illegal to educate, we found ways to educate ourselves.
Yeah, girl, digging pits in the ground and writing in flour.
Yeah, like looking at charting the stars, figuring out stuff. That's huge, right? Making recipes, turning terrible food that the Europeans brought over into something magical. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I think also too, I would love to hear your thoughts on. Where this is maybe segueing from parents and how they relate to teachers. I'm just going to keep it funky.
Go on ahead.
I think it can be hard sometimes for Black parents to communicate with white teachers.
Ooh,
and white administrators.
Right.
And white teachers for that matter. I mean, I have had this be very successful, and I have had this particular situation not go well. And specifically when I'm talking about issues of race, and how my children are being communicated to about it. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And I want to let the audience know you were involved in Black Lives Matter Action in Schools Week, developing that and making sure that that happens. So these are teachers, and we live in a district that probably has more white teachers than anything else, and that they had to be part of facilitating some of this. So I would love to hear you kind of speak on, how as Black parents we can get this kind of communication going with white teachers and admins.
So one thing that really helped with Black Lives Matter at school is that it was a multi-ethnic approach. Right? It helped that we had white teachers, white educators involved in the planning and the working who were bringing like their understanding, but were also very open to be, they were those teachers that would say, I got to step back because I don't know this. But until I know this, now I can share the word with my white brethren, because I am under the full rule of thought that white on white help is very helpful, right? That they can learn from each other, right? Like there is actually an organization called Building Anti-Racist White Educators that started here in Philly. It's a group of white educators to talk about their stuff and point out like how they could be better teachers to brown and Black children.
And and ultimately how they can be better teachers to white children too, because at the end of the day,
all the above,
white children need to understand these things because we don't need them growing up.
No, right. Like when people talk about culturally relevant pedagogy, they have a tendency to think it's only for brown and Black children. But if you really follow culturally relevant pedagogy, the secret sauce in it is it makes education better for all children, right? If I do these practices, all children benefit. All children stay in school longer. All children are suspended less. All children have less biases coming at them from teachers, right? Because at the end of the day, especially someone who had a child who had an IEP, that's a whole different, another story, right? You are basically, you're saying, look, my child needs these services. Like I think a lot of it has to do with about living in the community too, right? If you think about it, I know for a fact, I grew up in a neighborhood where the teachers lived in my neighborhood. Like the teachers were nearby. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then when I got older and I started teaching, in the beginning of my teaching career, it was kind of the same. Teachers were recruited from within their neighborhoods for neighborhood schools, right?
Yeah.
But as schools start to close and merge together and, things get further apart, we have a tendency to be teaching outside of our local communities, right? So what you have to do is, that's why I talk about relationship building. The first thing you need to do as a teacher when you come to a new school is you need to get to know the community that your kids are coming from. You have to get to know,
and that is important whether you are a Black teacher or a white teacher, because ultimately every school environment represents a unique community environment.
Unique community, right? A unique setting. If you come there like I know everything and it's my way or the highway, you have already created a wall, right? If a parent comes to you and you don't like the way that they told you basically about yourself and you got in all your feelings, you need to ask yourself, for one, a lot of times it's not personal. As a parent, I have come at teachers' throats for the simple fact that I'm frustrated. And I have been trying to talk to you over again. So now I'm screaming, yelling, looking crazy.
And that's the thing is that, it's emotional. It's your children, to have a conversation void of emotion about your children is damn near impossible. I can't imagine where that doesn't, how that can occur.
Right. And so you have to actually navigate that. Same way you navigate it with your kids. You know how many of my students have out-of-body experiences, like I like to call them? They done jumped up out their body and have cussed you stone cold out early in the morning. You like this? Oh, okay, well, Like,
well, I love the fact that you mentioned this out of body experience, because I think, you know, there's a trickle down in conversation that comes from out of the schools and kids, and how they young people, how they interact with teaching staff, and it perpetuates a conversation outside of the school that turns out to be pretty toxic, where it's like, oh, what's wrong with these kids?
Oh,
something
God,
wrong with these kids. And so I think it's good to say and consider that what you do as an educator in that moment when a child has an out-of-body experience, and particularly a Black child has an out-of-body experience, how do you respond to that, and what kind of language do we need to be using in response to that as a community?
Right. So like, the first thing you got to do is you can't take it personally, even though it sounds very personal.
Yeah.
Now, that's easier said than done.
For sure.
But that is the first step in your psychosis. Because, you know, the first thing is you want to punch them in the face, right? Because that's what we want to do, right?
Let's just keep it 100. Let's be honest here.
Right.
You want teachers are human beings as well.
Right. You want to just be like, what? You know what I'm saying? So you first say it's not personal, and then you slowly de-escalate. But that is also a training. A professional development. Yes.
Yes, indeed.
How do you stop? Now, I'm not saying that things get volatile, physically violent. Yes, there are things for that. But I'm talking about it's at this point a verbal, out-of-body experience.
Yeah, for sure.
There are.
I want you to hold the other two things you wanted to say till after we get back from this break. And we're going to continue talking with Tamara Anderson, who is a teen and child advocate, a parent, and an activist. And you're listening to the Source with Aja Graydon Dantzler, filling in for Andrea. Y'all come back with us after this break.
I've done everything to stay healthy and protect my unborn child during COVID. The way I see it, getting vaccinated is one less risk to me and my baby's health for now and the future. Plus, free vaccines are available in my neighborhood. You don't even need an appointment. Just walk in. You have the power to finish this.
Visit pa.gov/COVID for more information. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Kamasi Washington brings his fall tour to the Met Philly, one of only 6 dates on the East Coast. Don't miss Kamasi Washington October 20th at the Met Philly. Tickets on sale now as of July 30th. Tickets available at Ticketmaster.com.
The WURD Radio Newsletter. Keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting WURDradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio. Messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese. Exclusive articles and multimedia content and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio Newsletter.
You're listening to The Source
on WURD Radio,
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Hey everybody, if you're just tuning in, my name is Aja Graydon Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea on The Source this week. We're talking about educating Black children, and we were just speaking with Tamara Anderson, who is a student advocate and educator. She's an activist, and she was just giving us a few pointers, and we interrupted, but she was giving us some pointers on how we can respond in a school setting, particularly for educators, but then how we think about that outside of the school as parents and community members when Black students have emotional breakdowns, when they, you know, as she said, quote unquote, have an out-of-body experience, when they are going off, cussing you out, bringing a lot of their personal issues into the school, things that we know that we ourselves can relate to, but that we tend to misread when it comes to students. So I would love for you to finish what you were talking about before the break.
Yeah, I think, one, like I said, you have to not take it personally, but I also want to preface what I'm about to say with, I've taken several classes, courses, and de-escalation, dealing in whether it's verbally violent or physically violent. Like, I have taken those steps, right? I fortunately had a school admin who paid for a lot of the teachers to take these types of things. And these are things that are not given to you in a teacher education prep program. So you're definitely coming in with none of this, okay?
Yeah.
So one is not to take it personally. Second is to really realize how to de-escalate. A lot of de-escalation helps with physical space being given. Because I'm saying, when this happens, they're usually physically close to you, in your face, that type of stuff, right? So the thing for you to do is to back up, to get space, because you need that physical space.
Yeah.
And then you also need to kind of respond in silence, because they're taking enough, they're talking and screaming enough for both of you.
Yeah.
So then you find moments where you can ask these questions. So what is it that is really bothering you today? And the first thing might be, well, you beep, boop, 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 boop. That could come out, right? Okay.
Right.
Then you're, okay, besides me, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. The day just started.
Come on.
So,
there was a meme going around. There was a meme going around on Twitter. And we all remember this. This is not a these kids today. We remember a meme that was going around saying, like, y'all was really fighting at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Literally, with a plan.
Yeah, with a plan.
Purpose and Vaseline and friends.
Ready.
Yeah.
I mean, we can romanticize quite a bit the experiences that we had in school outside on the other side of parental trauma. As parents and as community members, we do have a tendency to romanticize our time at school, and not remembering some of the realities of school, the realities and the things that, how the outside community and the outside inequities and things found their ways into school, even through our experience, so I think it's important also to take a moment to remember what it was like truly in real time, what it was like for you as a student, as a Black person, as a Black girl, as a Black boy, as a Black queer child, because we could talk about how terrible school can be, as a Black overweight child, as a Black immigrant child. And so all of these things can come into play in the experience that our students have in school. And what ends up being, the first contact that they have, which is with their teacher, and the conversations that come in.
Like, you have hit on something really important. We also do poor autoethnographies, and what I mean by that, like, we do poor storytelling. We actually do very selective storytelling. When we would do ourselves a good service to start telling the truth and sharing our truth, not just with our teachers, but with our children, right? Like, when you see bullying, I can definitely know that there are teachers, parents who are survivors of bullying, because bullies just grow up to become adult bullies.
Yes. I mean, I posed a question on Instagram, want to say last week, talking about how there's too many people who've been bullied to not have some adults out here to have to do some atonement, to have a little bit of work to do, a little bit of some apologies to make. The numbers are too staggering. So yes, as parents, we have a lot that we can reflect on, that we can find a commonality with students today, with Black students today.
And we also need to take care of our mental health. When you are working as a teacher, a nurse, a social worker, any of these helping careers, you need to have a therapist on call.
And I mean, that turns into another resource that would be a great investment for the schools. One of our callers called, and I believe it was Maurice. Hi, Maurice. Maurice said, $1 billion put into the school. Where the $1 billion? Can we get... Can we get some therapists in there for the teachers with the $1 billion? I mean, how much of the $1 billion can we spend on that? And I think it's a fair question about really digging deep into what are the actual needs and how we can make those decisions budget wise. And, you know, and this is something that I found out, you know, fairly, I would say within the last 5, maybe 6 years, was just how much, you know, principals are involved in and at the helm of deciding what their individual school budgets are going to be spent on. Yeah. And that's a really great opportunity for you as a parent to chime in on what are the needs of your population in school. What are the needs for the teachers? What are the needs for the parents? Because that principal is the person who makes those decisions, how they're going, what kind of staff they're going to hire.
You have a right to reject the budget as a parent. A lot of parents don't realize that. It is your right to report a principal to 440 to let them know that you never saw the budget before they made a decision. You have a right, if you are a member of a home and school council at your school, to have a meeting with the principal about what is inside the budget before they submit it.
Right. And even more extensively so if you have a Title I school. So if you right. And so
but even if you have a present, like most schools now, like when we brought in SACs and home and school present, you know, home and school is actually included in the PFT contract. So it's not just a Title I, it's actually like embedded in like union agreements across like Philadelphia for, you know, Philadelphia public schools. But a lot of parents don't know that. A lot of parents have no idea that they can even ask about the budget, like ask to see a copy, right? But
I know that that's not. I mean, I had my students were in school for quite some time. My children were in school for quite some time before I understood and knew that. And I was a young mother. I went from being the youngest mother to being the oldest mother. God bless me.
Look at me.
At the kindergarten. I was the youngest mama at the kindergarten, and I was the oldest mama at the kindergarten. Come on now. At the kindergarten. But I do remember coming into understanding that it was a whole different experience afterwards, really getting to understand how my individual school was structured. I want to ask you another question about, and we talked about this in our pre-conversation, the Pennsylvania, what's happening in Pennsylvania around that national argument about critical race theory, and what what our students are learning as it pertains to, I mean, what is the conversation at a state level and at a city level about what our kids will learn about race in the schools?
Right. So we know that Philadelphia is the only school district in Pennsylvania where African American studies is actually a high school graduation requirement. But like we talked about last night, the quality of that education is going to vary, right? Because of just curriculum. Even though we have some wonderful people working on, like some of my colleagues working on African American Studies curriculum and the content and pieces, not every teacher is using those resources to their fullest advantage, right? But the fact is that was a battle after the 1967 student walkout that was won here in Philadelphia. Okay. As a state, House Bill 1811 being proposed, I think, by Republicans Diamond and Glime, Republicans in Harrisburg. This bill is an anti-CRT bill, and what's embedded in it is if anything connected to critical race theory or anti-racism or, you know, authentic histories are taught, it would affect how district funding. And there's even some language in there about affecting state-funded schools, which is really crazy because we know that critical race theory is definitely taught and covered in higher ed spaces. You know what I'm saying? So that will essentially affect how it's being taught at the collegiate level with schools that are with state schools. And you know, we have quite a few schools that are funded by the state. Yeah.
One in fact that's quite famous for having a very volatile racial climate. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there and interrupt you.
Something like this. Yeah.
So as parents, we have to be aware of what's happening here in Pennsylvania. What can we do? We have just a few minutes before hardly any minutes. We have a few seconds before the break, but can you tell us what we need to do in response to this as parents?
Yes,
how can we advocate against this?
I would say there's this campaign called #TeachTruth that's being sponsored by Zen Education Project, coordinated by Rethinking Schools and Teach for Change, Black Lives Matter at School, and the African American Policy Forum. Literally, if you type any of those words into Google, the link will come up. And there is a huge national action coming up August 27th to 29th, where we are asking teachers to pledge to teach the truth, but we're also asking parents to support that work, to have their students actually learn authentic, and we like to say racially authentic history. Because, the bills themselves are saying, well, we don't want to be divisive.
Right. Obvious. Yes, indeed.
Right.
Okay, so I hate to interrupt you. Goodness gracious. Everybody's been so great, and I keep having to interrupt. We have to take a break.
No.
Can you hang in there with us just for a few after the break so we can make sure that you get all this information in?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. We're going to take a quick break, guys. You're listening to The Source. This is Aja Graydon Dantzler. We'll be right back.
Hey, WURD family, did you hear? It's official. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance just announced the new age for colon cancer screenings has been officially lowered to age 45 for everyone. If you are 45 or older, it's time to get screened. Go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner to register for your free at-home screening test. Did you know colon cancer is largely preventable with on-time screening? And there's a 90% survival rate when caught early. African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. So for the next 3 months, you can go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. A screening navigator will contact you to ask a few questions and help you get screened. It's that simple. Again, just go to WURDradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and fill out the form to request your free at-home screening test. Go to Know today.
They're back!
Everyone's ready.
Platinum Shows presents the Dell Music Center Summer Series. Sunday, August 1st, it's Jeffrey Osborne. On the wings of love. Peebo Bryson. I'm so into you. And Regina Bell. Then Sunday, August 15th, it's the Basement Party with Big Daddy Kane. Baby Cool Mo D. EPMD, Nice and Smooth. The Sugar Hill Gang with a Furious Five featuring Grandmaster Melly Mel and Scorpio. Roxanne Shante. And Tough Crew. Then Sunday, September 5th, Labor Day weekend, it's the Party in the Park with the Whispers. Stephanie Mills. And After 7. Tickets available at the Dell box office and Ticketmaster.com. For more information, log on to ppshows.com.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Be there this Friday at the Summer Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour and stand with WURD Radio to amplify voices of the Black community as a digital 4WURD member for as low as $5 per month. And receive a free gift for signing up. See you on Friday and join Tiffany Bacon, 10 a.m. till noon at the Marian Anderson Recreation Center, 740 South 7th Street, or visit WURDradio.com. Start or renew your 4WURD membership today.
We ran your ride. miracle. Even our weaknesses fly. Gave you a song to sing and a reason to be. You thought you'd won the race with all the things you stole from me. But we don't live in lack, even when we died. And not your blessings to give. We got our own supply.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app.
Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media.
You're listening to The Source
On WURD Radio.
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back, everybody. Again, you are listening to The Source, and I'm Aja Graydon Dantzler, one half of the group Kindred the Family Soul. We're bred out of Philadelphia as a group. My husband's from here, but I'm from Washington, D.C. And before the break, we were listening to a song off our new album called Rejoice, Renew, Repair. Yes, indeedy. That's off our new album, Auntie and Unc. So y'all get a chance to check that out when you can. Before we went to break, we were talking with Tamara Anderson, who is a student advocate, activist, and educator. She was telling us about the current legislation that's on the table in the state of Pennsylvania, trying to eliminate critical race theory and the fallout from that, which could affect even how it's taught at the collegiate level. So I would love for her to continue telling us what we need to do as parents and community members to push back at this legislation and make sure that this does not happen.
Yes. So one I also want to say is that I also want to connect this to elections. So we know that we're about to be coming on to a huge governor election because Governor Wolf's term is ending, right?
Yeah.
And so there is talk that if this bill got to him, he wouldn't sign it. Okay, but it's really not about him. It's about the upcoming governor race. And two of the Republican, nominees who want to run for governor have already said that if something like this comes across their table, they will definitely sign it. So one thing we want to do in Philadelphia is we want to pay attention to this governor's race and make sure we are turning out to vote. And what are they talking about? And does it help us, right? Let me do that. We are the largest city in the Commonwealth. We should be turning out votes to make sure something happens.
Because we know how quickly it could take a turn for the worse. We saw it happen right here in this state.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
And next, I would encourage you to check out #TeachTruth campaign at Zen Education Project. If you go look that up, Google, it'll come right up. You can also go to blacklivesmatter@school.com, and you also get connected to the same information because they're one of the sponsors. Philly is having a teach-in, actually, August 27th. All the details are not fully set yet, but you can look for that on Facebook on Black Lives Matter Week of Action -Philly on that page. It'll be updates for that, and also be updates on the Zen Education, because the goal is to get all the national actions that are happening that weekend to get them posted on the page. So those are ways that you could turn in. And also I want to say this. We had talked about art yesterday, and something that just came across my table, I don't know if everybody knows about this, is the Jamboree is happening at the University City Arts League on August 21st from 11 to 2 p.m. For kids and families. And they're like 42nd and Spruce. It'll be like that whole community. It'll be drumming and music and all types of amazing, wonderful things out there for kids and families to enjoy. So, yes.
Oh, fantastic. That was excellent. So I hope everybody had their pen and paper down, and just real quick, just give us those websites one more time where they can find out what they need to do in terms of looking for this campaign?
Right.
Both
you Google hashtag Teach Truth, Then Education Project. It'll come up. You can also look at blacklivesmatterschool.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can also go on the Facebook page for Black Lives Matter Week of Action Philly to see when's there going to be action here. We're going to have a parents table. They're going to teach about like what's happening with toxic schools and all that stuff. Like it's going to be very intergenerational to talk about like what we could do here. And then of course, you know, check out, bring your family and kids out to the Jamboree on August 21st from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
I love it.
With the University City Arts League.
University City Arts League. I want to point this out before you go, that that you mentioned voting, you paying attention to the gubernatorial race. And I think it's really important that we also just take a look back at the first hour when Dr. Royal also mentioned being aware of how parent groups feed into politics, into city council, into this and politics at the state level and city level. And you know, I know voting has been an ongoing conversation back and forth. These are the moments where we're able to make the connections about how voting affects our children at the policy level. Now we're getting to see, I mean, I'm sure many of you already know this, but for those of you who don't, and for those of you who need this moment to help make that connection for your neighbors, your friends, and your family, I just want to make sure that that's there. I'm going to take a quick caller if you have a moment before we say goodbye.
Oh, yeah.
We have Teresa from North Philly. Hi, Teresa. How are you doing? You there, Teresa? Okay. Well, we'll come back to Teresa and see if she's there in a moment. But I want to thank you so much, Tamara, for coming on to the show and talking to us about this, for shedding this light on what it's like to be a parent advocate and a parent at the same time, to be out here fighting the good fight. I think a lot of times we forget that as we're, living our everyday lives, there are organizers that are putting a lot on the line, spending a lot of time, emotional energy, physical energy, intellectual energy to fight the good fight on our behalf. And many of them are also dealing with the same kinds of life experiences that we are, being parents, having full-time jobs, and all of those things. And so we thank you. We thank you, and we thank so many of the parents like you who are out there and helping us to navigate this by being on the front line.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on. This is great. This is an important conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, goodness gracious, goodness. Okay, one more thing. Shoot. See, Black folks don't know how to say goodbye. This is me putting I got one foot in the car door and you standing on the porch. One more thing before I go. Students in Philadelphia going back August 31st.
Ooh.
Parents are obviously dealing with a lot of back and forth and conversation about COVID safety, about children going into the building. Some parents are like, thank God my child cannot be in this house any longer because they are just losing it. Other parents are like, no way, I'm concerned about their health. There's so much on either side. There's talk of possible mandates for staff to have the vaccine. We still have, in many instances, people who cannot get the vaccine. Maybe they want it, but they can't get it. They can't get off work. All these different aspects. Are there some things that you might want to talk to our parents about as they advocate for their students in this very unique situation, about their options and what they can do moving forward?
I mean, the biggest thing I think for parents to realize is that you have to think about the safety of your children first. Because in all reality, it's not a guarantee that the school district, which is basically functioning as a business, is going to think about that. So you have to be really adamant to ask those questions. Like there's news reports coming out about, children under the age of 13 and them getting COVID symptoms and them passing it along and having long-term effects and all these different things. So these are questions that you need to have with your child's physician, your doctor, to really have a plan for your household. Because what we have discovered, and we know dealing with COVID-19 now for the last year, is that COVID-19 is not an individual thing. Once it enters your space, it kind of runs havoc across everything. And so you want to make sure that you see those air purifiers that they speak about, that your school has cleaned the HVAC system filters, that they're actually cleaning at a different level, because it's going to be difficult to go from real nasty to super clean overnight.
Yeah, because the schools wasn't really that clean to begin with. I mean, all due respect to folks who are cleaning staff in the public school systems. We have all the respect for your work. We do understand.
Yes.
A lot of these buildings are old.
But they are limited, too. But sometimes their hands are tied by the powers that be.
Mm-hmm.
They get limited supplies. There's lots that, like, these are types of things we can't see no more. We need to see that you have plenty of soap, plenty of hand sanitizer, plenty of toilet tissue, like things that actual teachers have been buying for several years.
Hello.
That needs to be just a regular thing that is there.
Yeah, for sure. Also, too, in Philadelphia and a lot of the old cities, we had somebody listening in from Massachusetts yesterday. So, again, cities like Boston, cities like Philadelphia, Baltimore, places like that, where their facilities and their infrastructure is very, 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 very old. Even Dr. Royal talked about how old Central High School is, and it was started in the I think she said 1830s. Yes. Hello. Yes. So we're looking at buildings that, are quite old and had facility issues prior to COVID. So these are questions we need to be asking. Have they done thorough removal of asbestos and facilities issues that we had prior to COVID? So these are all questions we need to be asking as we're being, told that our children will be returning full time. Also, too, there were options for entering virtual academy, which I believe is only for the first few days of this week. I want to say 4 days out of this week.
It is. I think they're going to be asynchronous. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we need to be aware that virtual academy is going to function very different from the way that we saw online learning function when all of our students were out of school. So be aware of that and educate yourself on that. Research about that. Ask plenty of questions about that. Yes, indeedy. Again, I really thank you for coming on to the show. I'm in the car. I've closed the car. I've started it up.
Okay,
I'm really
we're
going to leave
waving.
this time.
I'm waving to you down.
You're waving to me down the street. I appreciate you, sis. And I hope that we get an opportunity to talk again offline. It was amazing having you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Yes, indeed. So what a great conversations that we've been having so far. If you want to chime in, you can call 215-634-8065 and talk to us. I know Teresa hung up. Come on, Teresa, call back. Don't be scared. But yeah, if y'all want to have a conversation about this, I really would love to hear again. And I want to pose this question again to everybody that we talked about in the first hour, is that what is the purpose of school for you? What are your feelings about what school is and how it functions? And I really want to hear your value systems around that so we can begin to get into these more overarching conversations about educating Black students. Oh, great. We have Viola on the phone, who is an avid listener from Delaware. Hi, Viola.
Hi, AJ. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been in Delaware since 2002. My daughter graduated from down here at Sussex Central High, and she graduated from the school that was a combination of a high school and a middle school. Well, now that school is an elementary and a middle school. They remodeled it from upside down, inside out. I have seen 5 schools built since I've been here since 2002. And I worked for the school busing during COVID. Those buses were sanitized every day when we got off of them. You had to drive that bus over, and a guy had a machine that he went in there, put the mister in there, And the bus drivers even had something to wipe after the kids got off the bus in the morning. You didn't have to do it in the afternoon. I didn't realize what schools look like until I came to Delaware. And I'm a graduate of Olney High, 1966, and the same drapers that were hanging when I graduated were still hanging in 2003 when my nephew graduated from Olney High.
My God.
And I looked at that auditorium, I said, oh my goodness. I said, those are the drapes that were hanging when I was here. That's how bad they look.
Ooh.
That's how bad they look. And the parents, I'm a grandmother, and I went to Inland Elementary with my granddaughter, who is now out of high school. So she was at Inland at the time, so she might have been in 6th grade, 5th grade. And I questioned about why the lunchroom looked the way it did. The custodian said to me, oh, well, we clean up after they get out for Christmas break. I said, huh? Mrs. Cyberlick was the principal when a friend of mine was the school community coordinator. That school was spotless. They had washer and dryer for the special needs kids when they messed up their clothes. And I don't want to compare a black principal over a white principal, but based on the fact of the parents, I called in when Dr. Height and Reverend Waller were on WURD radio, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. And I complained about how Emlyn looked. They painted that school within 2 weeks' time. Now, I'm just a grandparent. You know, I don't use no profanity. But I tell you, I'm on the edge of saying something that I might get beat for, and I'm not going to say it. But I had a daughter and was in that same school when Mrs. Cyberlick was there. She put her children in there because she lived near the school. And I told her that if her and her husband don't know what the school looked like their children are going to, it's their fault. And I said that to my daughter. And I'm a grandparent. And I feel as though that the parents are partly to blame why some of the schools look the way they do. You march over there to Thurgood Marshall at 6th and Duncannon. I got a grandson over there. And I went in there and saw the difference in the principal. He had remodeled, painted. I said, oh, my goodness. I said, I can see a lot has been done. I'm in Delaware, but nobody never knows when I'm in Philadelphia. And the teacher or somebody calls and says, Miss Gray, I said, I'm in Philadelphia. What you want? And I go straight to the school. I go straight to the school when I leave Delaware. 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes is a ride for me. I take that ride like it's 15 minutes because I'm concerned about my grandchildren.
They like, my grandma's coming. Y'all going to have to get this thing together.
And I sat in the classroom with my grandson when he was in the 3rd or 4th grade. The teacher was sweeping. I said, why are you sweeping? She said, I have to do this because the children, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
The schools down here, I tell you,
I think a lot of this is reflected also in the amount of money that's being spent and how it's being spent. And you can see also, too, in the way that certain states are handling their COVID numbers and their response to COVID, that you're starting to see just how capable and how organized they are around cleanliness and about facilities upkeep. So you really getting a chance to see the real deal.
I've been here since 2002. And I saw the difference in the school system and Philadelphia school system. COVID is just 2 years old. I'm talking about way before COVID. Way before COVID. And the new school, the brand new high school, Sussex Central, I send pictures to people and take pictures and show them what the schools look like down here. And they say, well, where is that? Because I compare what some of the schools. I took pictures of some of the metal pieces that were bent in Thurgood Marshall. I have them on my phone right now, and I can send it to anybody. But guess what? They pulled all of them off. The radiators that had bent pieces on it, I said, okay, they did something about it. But I didn't report anything, but I saw that something was done because a new principal came in. The principal that went out, he wasn't doing much of anything, and he was a black principal. So I don't want to call no names, but I tell you, I dropped everything when they called about my child, and I was doing hair at home. I'd leave a customer in the chair and go to Lincoln or motivational school. Within 15 minutes. I said, I'll be right back. And I left. My daughter didn't get suspended because I showed up.
Yeah, I think that it's been a really great an ongoing conversation specifically with schools and educators about the involvement of parents, and that yes, indeed, and you know, on the other side of things, and I think it is excellent when parents and grandparents and other community members can make themselves available to advocate. I do know that it can be quite, challenging for some families to do that. And so it's important that we do make our voices heard, but that we're also aware that, there's a number of challenges with parents where they're not always able to be there in person to, to keep an eye on these kinds of things. But in the wake of the pandemic, even though a lot of these facility issues existed before, in the wake of the pandemic, we can really continue to encourage parents and community members to hold the buildings accountable, hold the principals accountable, let these people know that we're looking for certain things to look and feel a certain way so that we know that the health of our students is being prioritized, no matter if you're in a new building or you're in a 200-year-old building. And I think that's, ultimately what is going to happen if we intend to move forward in a way that's healthy for our students. Thank you, Viola. I appreciate you calling in for day 2. Yes, I feel like I'm getting in good.
I'm making a peach cobbler, so I'm at home.
Okay. Well, I would love to have some of that, or maybe I have to go make one of my own. But I appreciate you calling in, sis.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. You're listening to The Source, and we're talking about educating Black students. And, we're about to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to have another guest who I'm really excited about, Yolanda Jones, who is many, many things, but one of my favorite homeschoolers. We're going to talk about that aspect of things. So y'all hang in there, and I'll see you on the other side.
Philadelphia Families, PHL Pre-K, the city's free quality pre-K program, is growing and now enrolling. Over 160 pre-K centers are ready to serve children this year. There are no income limits for this free pre-K program. Children who are 3 or 4 years old as of September 1 can enroll. Call 844-PHL-PRE-K or visit phlprek.org to learn more and find a quality pre-K center. That's 844-745-7735. This program is made possible by the Philadelphia Beverage Tax.
Hope Partnership Middle School offers a quality, subsidized independent school education to students and families in North Philadelphia. Located at 2601 North 11th Street, Hope offers small class sizes, personalized learning, a research-based curriculum, dedicated teachers, and a graduate support program, which supports students through high school graduation. They are currently accepting applications for 5th to 7th grade students for September. For more information, please contact them at info@hope-partnership.org.
You're listening to The Source
on WURD Radio,
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to The Source. This is Aja Graydon Dantzler. I am filling in for Andrea Lawful Saunders while she is out, but I will be just here this week. I'll be back again on Thursday, so hopefully you guys can join me then. Today, we are talking about educating Black children, and we've had some really good conversations, some good callers. We've come up with quite a few things to remember about being parents, about being educators and community members. We have a guest on the line, and her name is Yolanda Jones. She is a teacher. She's a guide for parents and teachers, administrators, business leaders, and community leaders. She she seeks to ignite inspiration, fuel empowerment, stoke authenticity, and cultivate healing through facilitating soul-to-soul connection. And I can't wait to talk to her even more so about this concept. I've come to know her through the interwebs, because sometimes you can meet some amazing people in the social media space. It gets, vilified quite a bit, but I've met some amazing Black women through social media. And I've come to understand it and know her through the lens of being a homeschooler. And she homeschools her 4 children, and they are smart and sharp and amazing and beautiful. And so I would love to get an opportunity to talk to her more about that. Welcome to the show, Yolanda Coles Jones.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. How you doing?
I am well. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Like I said, you do so many things. You're an artist, you're a teacher, but and I have actually seen what you do evolve over time. So we're going to talk about that throughout this conversation, but I want to start kind of at the beginning and specifically around educating your young people. I would love you to tell me, how did you come to the decision and what made you decide that you were going to homeschool them?
Sure. So it's twofold, and it, just like what you have witnessed in my life, it has evolved over time. When we began with my oldest child, who's 13, we were thinking about this when she was around 3 or 4 years old, and we were around peers who were, talking about their children enrolling in kindergarten and being admitted to this school and that school, and there was a lot of excitement around it, and I just had this gut feeling that it just didn't feel right for me to send my baby that soon to be away from her father and I for most of her waking hours. And so I just went with that feeling that I had in my gut and began researching, sort of questioning who chooses what my child will be learning, who decides what the curriculum will be, what's happening in my locale. So I began looking into all of this, and it just wasn't sitting right with me, just the concept of sending her away that soon. I was thinking about everything. I was thinking about school buses and teachers and just all these new adults that would be in her life before we had finished or sort of come to any sense of closure around all the things that we were already doing. We were having such a good time. Like, we were just having fun, exploring life together. And it was just like, wait, who says that this is what has to happen when she turns 4? Like, who said? And then it became, what are our other options? And so then I started talking to folks who, actually there was just one mom that I started with, and she happened to be on the street that I grew up on in my parents' neighborhood, and we knew that they were the homeschool family because they were the folks that they never came out. So I'm gonna share this. Like, they were not the kind of homeschool that homeschool has evolved into today, but they were like my first association with homeschool, and I happened to be close enough with this family to be able to go and talk and sit with this mom who by this point had like grown children. I wanted to get a sense of what the end result might look like. That started why we homeschool, to answer your question. But at this point, now we have 4 kids, and it has become this desire to want each of them to have faith, to unfold into who they truly are without the imposition of a lot of people's opinions, including their fathers, in my opinion. Like, we want to partner with them as well as supply them with the skills and, the know-how that we know they will need in this life, connecting them with other teachers and leaders and activities and constituencies that can support their interests, as well as, the core things, math and sciences and exploratory activities. But it's mainly liberation. Like, it's just freedom. It is wanting to have a sense of, or them to have a sense of who they are and have space to hear it within themselves without a lot of other voices to fight through first, right? And so if they get to any space where they decide, I think I want to try, I want to enroll in this thing or that thing, be it public school or private school or whatever the case, the goal is to give them a strong foundation so that when they go out into the world, they have a good sense of self-possession and they have context. They know who they are, where they're from. They got a sense of, inwardly who they truly are intrinsically before that is in any way just covered up.
I think that's amazing because you have ultimately what Dr. Royal said, a very clear definition as to what you expect school to function as. or what is it, what is the purpose of schooling in your household? You've been really clear about what the definition of that is. And, I love that you brought up the homeschool family, quote unquote, because I think there's a lot of fear, and specifically in our community, about what that homeschool family looks like. The infamous question, well, what about the kid's social life? And what about this? And what about math or science, when the parent feels like maybe they're not, up to par in those particular subjects. So I'd love you to speak to some of those general misconceptions about what's absent from homeschooling and how you have addressed that in your thinking and philosophy with schooling your children.
Sure. So initially, again, my introduction to homeschool, as I understood it 13, 14 years ago, was very much placed inside of a conservative, Christian, white context, right? Like, that was my introduction to it. And I quickly found that was not suitable for us. It didn't fit us at all. So there was that initial language for home school, so school happening at home. And there were a lot of people trying to mimic what goes on in a classroom, down to like the way the classroom is set up, exactly how many hours you have to be sitting in a desk, all of that. And we very quickly found out that wasn't the way we wanted to do it. So it became, so I actually use this language as home-based education rather than homeschool, because for us, home, which is our family and the structure that is within the walls, but also is wherever we show up in the world. Like, so that is the base for education of all kinds. And it's not just the core academic. That's important. That's part of it. But there's also an emotional education that takes place, spiritual exploration on part of each individual, each human that's making the journey that they're making, physical education. There are all these components to it. There's relational education. All of this is part of it. And the academics are a portion. And so when people talk to us and ask us, like, what does this look like? What does socialization look like? What does math look like? What does science look like? Initially, it looked like living, right? Like, it looked like when the kids were very small, we focused a lot on reading and reading fundamentals and having aptitude there. And then we focused a lot on how many lessons can we find just in our doing life together. So when we were in the grocery store, during the times where we, pre-COVID, we were going into the grocery store, there were kids, some of the kids were making a list. Some of the kids were identifying colors in the produce. Some of the kids were looking at the price tags and totaling things up. Like, it was very practical. It is the lessons that show up organically in our everyday life. So there's a lot of that. And then as they get older, so, they're getting closer to age 8, age 9, while we're working on, counting pinto beans and drawing numbers in shaving cream with our fingers, they go from that to moving into more focused and structured math the older that they get, right? So that people are scared about math. There are plenty of ways to access structured math education that doesn't necessarily look like it looks in a traditional school setting.
And it's interesting because now to continue to have these kinds of questions being posed to home-based schoolers, that in the era where we can find everything online, there's probably more. I mean, is it safe to say that there's more resources around this than there ever were before?
I think so. I mean, I am completely amazed. Over the course of the last year, my oldest child has found a writing club through something called OutSchool, which is one of the schools that has been a part of, we actually just found it a couple of years ago. But her writing group has more, there's international kiddos who have formed this writing group. They're launching a website, they're launching a literary magazine, and this is for the child who is blooming and coming through as someone who is especially interested in becoming a writer. She's been writing since she was 7 or 8, and she's 13, and now she has this space to connect with people all over the world, and that is, something that she connected with virtually. There's so many resources online right now.
I think it's interesting to see that in the era of COVID-19, a pandemic era, that we'll always look back on this time as a time period that brought up so many things for Black families, from racial, from racial politics to health care, education, all kinds of things that Black families have had to focus on in this past 2 years, tenfold or twofold more than they did before. We're looking at homeschool. People who are opting into homeschool, Black families, has more than doubled.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on why you think that is. And it, we can make some assumptions as to why, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on why you think that in this day and time, this option is becoming more and more of a reality for so many more Black families.
Well, I think it's just amplifying what was already there for a lot of folks who just maybe didn't see it as clearly. I think that's part of it. It is definitely true that there are many, if you just look at the curriculum for a lot of these schools, they are not centering protagonists or stories or narratives that are supportive to the self-esteem and the sense of place in a positive or affirming sense for Black families, for Black kids, which is not happening. I think it's happening more than it was, but I think that it's not enough. It's not meeting a lot of our children where they are. And so parents are just realizing that they have to take matters into their own hands and are figuring out how to do that by any means necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. If you guys want to chime in on this conversation, we're talking to, if you're just tuning in, we're talking with Yolanda Coles-Jones, who is she assists not only parents, but teachers and administrators and community members on a number of different ways to communicate and nurture. But specifically, we're talking about the way that she's nurturing her own family through home-based schooling, and a part of a broader conversation we're having today about educating Black children. So if you want to chime in, you can call 215-634-8065 and tell us about what you think about this. If we have any other homeschoolers out there who are listening in, we'd love to hear what you have to say about it, and we'd love to hear if you have any questions for our guests. Social media. And actually, I joined a Facebook group for Black homeschoolers here in Pennsylvania, which I have found to be extremely informative. How important is it for you in how you build your community of other parents who have the same kind of value system that you have? And how important are they? And how do you build community with other home-based education families?
Yeah. No, it's paramount important, especially if you are a working parent and you can't. For me, I don't want to be the teacher of all the things. That's the thing that a lot of people are confused about when it comes to homeschool and are surprised about when they speak with me, is that I don't teach all the subjects, nor do I want to. So community is essential in that everyone is providing some aspect of the education. They're community teachers that are in a formal sense and community teachers that are in an informal sense. And then there's also the community that we build around those who are leading out the facilitation of education. So peers that I can touch into that understand what it's like to be in the space. That's of paramount importance for my sanity, for not feeling alone out here. All the things. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned your sanity, because a couple things. A lot of people think that you have to be a certain kind of personality, or that there's a certain kind of parent that can do this. And also too, just what it takes, and harkening back to what people learned from the pandemic. Okay. A lot of parents was like, we need to pay these teachers more money, because if I had to look at this kid one more day, I'm going to lose my mind. They could not kind of get through this time without having some serious challenges, emotional challenges and mental health challenges through this experience. So I'd love you to speak to, you did talk about building community, but the self-care as a parent who is doing home-based education, in addition to, like you said, building a sense of community with other educators, how do you take care of your mental? How do you keep yourself from losing it, per se?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an important question, and one that I love answering because I'm not a kid person. I never have been. That's another
I love it.
I'm not a kid person. I'm not Pinteresty. I'm not crafty. I'm not any of these things that most people think of. I'm not super organized. Like, none of that stuff. Not super organized. Or you have to be a certain level of, like, you know, you have to have some level of organization. But I'm not like a lot of these people that I see in the world who are homeschool parents or parents in general. I'm just not like a lot of those folks. And so for me, it's been really important to have the right perspective, right? So I'm not the end all, be all the things for anybody in my house. I'm in a facilitating role, and that takes pressure off of me, right? I take pressure off myself by making sure that I completely understand the role that I'm playing. Then the way that I see my children, right? Like, it becomes this thing where they're not just these mess makers and noise makers and, you know, folks who are just out to, like, disrupt my day on purpose. Like, that's not how I'm seeing them. I am relating with them, and you mentioned this at the beginning, like, it's very important to me to relate to, you know, anyone that I'm encountering with from a soul-to-soul connection. So I see my children as beings who are new in the world, who are making their own separate journeys, who happen to be with me for this period of time that they're with me, and they're not going to be with me forever. I am not the person who tries to control the things that they say and do. I also am the person who is here to help guide them. So there's that balance with that. Like, I'm not trying to I relate to them from a level of respect and dignity that causes them to reflect that back to me. Like, that's how it happens. And so, you know, it is absolutely true that, I mean, I was just thinking about this as I was preparing content yesterday, that when one of my sons was 3, we understood that he was a fire spirit. Like, that just came all the way out when he was around 3 years old. And he was a lot to deal with. His emotions were very big. He was very big emotionally, and that particular child was the first one. He was the first one that was that big. So it was a real challenge for me to grow the muscle that I needed to interact with him in a way that still had this reverence to it, but also a leadership quality to it and partnership quality to it. So I'm not.
I think that's radical. But we're going to talk about a little bit more about how that is in you know, juxtaposed with how we're taught to parent as soon as we get back after this break. You guys are listening to The Source. Y'all hang in there with us. We're going to be talking about this some more, educating Black children. We'll see you in a moment.
The hottest place to hang out this summer is the Dell Music Center. The lineup is lit. Thursday, August 5th, 10. Who came to make sweet love, not me. SWV. And Drew Hill. Then on August 12th, Gregory Porter, Stokely, and Leela James. Then on Thursday, August 19th, Fresh Off versus the Isley Brothers. Performing all their greatest hits with Kelly Price and Carol Riddick. Get your tickets at the Dell box office and Ticketmaster.com. This is going to be an incredible season with Tank, SWV, Drew Hill, Gregory Porter, Stokely, Leela James, Carol Riddick, Kelly Price, and the Isley Brothers. For more information, log on to thedellmusiccenter.com.
As a community service, WURD Radio and the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium wants to keep you informed about where you can get barrier-free COVID-19 testing and vaccination this week. Tuesday, August 3rd and Thursday, August 5th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Deliverance Evangelistic Church, 2001 West Lehigh Avenue in Philadelphia. For more information, visit blackdoctorsconsortium.com. Stay informed and stay well with WURD Radio.
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Join WURD for the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour. This year we celebrate West Oak Lane, Mantua, North, West, and South Philly. I'm Tiffany Bacon, and I'll broadcast live from a different neighborhood each Friday from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. Our next stop is South Philly at the Marian Anderson Rec Center, 740 South 17th Street on Friday, August 6th. Enjoy live performances, meet special guests, and stand with WURD. Be a part of the movement to amplify the voice of the Black community. Show your support and join or renew your WURD membership on site. That's the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour at the Marian Anderson Rec Center from 10 a.m. until 12 noon on Friday, August 6th. WURD, showing love this summer.
The WURD Radio Neighborhood Love Tour is sponsored by Comcast and supported by Pico, Keystone First, and Ready Set Philly.
You're listening to The Source on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Aja Graydon Dancer. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders right here on The Source. And today we're talking about educating Black children. And we have Yolanda Coles-Jones on the phone, and we're talking to her about the way, in the specific way that she approaches her home-based education with her 4 beautiful children. Before going to the break, she discussed the importance of self-care as a home-based parent, that understanding not to play every single role for her students, and that you can outsource a number of different things, especially when it comes to certain kinds of rigor, but also just to make sure that the responsibilities are spread and that that there's not a singular parent taking on the full brunt of the responsibility of educating their children, and that, community is important in that. Welcome back, Yolanda. After this break, I want to have a question for you. This approach, home-based education, in your opinion, how do you think this specifically benefits Black children, Black and brown children?
I just think about it. I first think about context. If we're speaking specifically to Americans, in the United States, those of us who do and have descended from enslaved people in America, those of us who have not, those of us who are still a part of this, moving through the world as people of color, as Black people specifically in the world, in states, there's a very specific context to that. And so in order to go into what I often describe as a hostile environment, which begins arguably as soon as you walk out your door, and in many cases inside your home, you have to have some place to spring from. You have to have some sense of the inner, core awareness, confidence, being shored up, knowing that you're rooted in something, knowing that you belong somewhere, knowing that you matter, knowing that you are cared for, that you are seen, that you're heard and loved. For me, and for my household, the way that I approach it with my children, and I was thinking, as I was speaking earlier about one of my sons, I have twin sons, but one of them who was he's a deeply feeling child, and we began to learn this about him when he was 3, mostly when he was angry. And I was just instantly, I was like, oh my God. It was fear, initially it was fear, then it became, how do I support this being moving through the world, because he's not going to stay in his little body, and this body is Black. And I looked out on the world and I saw the context that he is going to be growing up in, and said, no, I have to give, to the best of my ability, this baby everything that I can give him so that he can understand how to govern himself, so that no one feels that they get to, he doesn't give anyone additional reason to feel that they have to govern him. So it's just a matter of self-awareness, self-possession, self-efficacy, self-esteem, confidence, rootedness. That's what I feel is important for us to offer Black children in America specifically. I think really anybody, but especially Black children in America.
Woo, baby. and I mean, I'm sorry, I had to take a moment to ingest that, because I know that anyone listening has to understand or has to realize how central all of those things are to a child's baseline education before they ever add a number, before they ever read a book, before they ever decide what they want to be when they grow up. That those core value systems in terms of what they take out into the world is so important. And when they don't get it, what we must do and how we must behave in order to then implement it later on down the line, which can be much more difficult. And also realizing that sometimes we don't have it.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I snatched out my own edges just then, because to be honest, no, I'm talking about as a parent, when you're thinking about like, okay, dag, do I have these things? You know, do I have good self-efficacy? Do I have self-esteem? Are those things that I possess? So I think that that's really, you know, to me ties in all of the conversations that we've had today, and really how we started off this conversation, which is just what are we trying to teach our Black children? What is it? What is the purpose of schooling? What is the value that we have? What are we trying to accomplish? And then we can build a system, a community around this, a curriculum around this that says that we are prioritizing the mental wellness and you know, of our children first and foremost, and then that we are kind of, you know, building community around that. So I'm just really, really grateful. So I thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experiences with our audience. Where can people find out more about your work?
Yes, thank you for having me, firstly. There are two places. I hang out a lot on Instagram. So Yolanda, YOLONDA_J. Make sure you put an O after that L, YOLONDA_J. And then on my website, which is www.yolandajonescreative.com.
Yeah, I want you guys to make sure y'all don't put YOLA. It's YOLO. 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 Yes. Okay? YOLO. Yolanda. And I will make sure you guys get that correct. But yes, please check her out. I thank you so much, Yolanda. You're the best. You know, you have been a support to me in many, many ways. So I want y'all to check out her work. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, sis. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Again, we are talking about all day today. On the show today, we're talking about educating Black children. And we have just, for me, it's just been a wealth of information. We've been talking about understanding the purpose of schooling. We're talking about implementing and helping to advocate for students, not only individually, but at the policy level. We talked about how your vote is deeply tied to this, you know, paying attention to how budgets are set up and who is going to be responsible for signing, you know, legislation. And obviously, currently, we've been talking a lot about critical race theory and how that may affect how our students and how all students, not just Black students, are going to be learning about the history, our history in this country. And so we have to be aware of that. And so our vote is very important in that aspect. But then also that we take a step back from what we traditionally look at as education, and that we look at the well-being of our young people, and that we're investing that time in teaching them and helping them learn how to move about the world with a certain amount of confidence and self-love. And that at the end of the day, that is what is most important about how we educate Black children. I'm so happy to get the opportunity to talk to you guys today. I want to also take this moment to just remind you that we did have an opportunity to preview my new album, which is called Auntie and Up. If you're watching on Facebook, check out the pic. Please get an opportunity to go back and listen to that album, and you can get it on all streaming platforms. I'm going to be back here on Thursday, and from 1 to 4, again, filling in. And we're going to be talking about teenagers And they are fun subject, don't you think? Y'all stay tuned for next up on WURD. More programming for you, for the community. I appreciate y'all, and I thank you for hanging out with me today. You're listening to The Source, and this is Aja Graydon Dantzler. Y'all be good.